Hi everybody, Kevin Ostie here at the 2018 Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. Welcome to After Hours Live. Yeah! There are certain events that only happen once each year, and for muscle car and Corvette fans, this is what it's all about. Join us as we take a look at some of the highlights from what has been called the greatest show of its kind, the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. While many think of Detroit as the Motor City, or Southern California as a mecca of car culture, the Windy City becomes the center of the muscle car and Corvette universe each November when it hosts the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. The show, commonly referred to as MCACN by those in the know, is an indoor car show unlike any other, where the organizers strive to assemble hundreds of historically significant and unique cars and display them in thoughtful presentations. Welcome to V8 TV's coverage of the 2018 Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals After Hours Live, coming to you from Chicago. Coverage of After Hours Live is brought to you by the Mecum Auction Company, the world's largest collector car auction house. Visit Mecum.com today to start your own Mecum experience as a buyer, seller, or spectator. The experience begins at Mecum.com. And by Original Parts Group, premium quality GM restoration and performance parts since 1982. We'll be back live right after these, so stick around.
Grandma, can I play with this?
Sure thing.
Got it.
Sold $41,000 Frank's way.
Happy birthday.
At Original Parts Group, we're proud to be the largest USA supplier of in-stock restoration, aftermarket, and performance parts for your GM A, B, C, E, and G body vehicle, including our newly released Cadillac, XLR, CTS, STS, ATS, Escalade, and EXT. Shipped directly from our 100,000 square foot warehouse and backed by our unbeatable low price guarantee. Order your free full color catalog today from OPGI.com.
But joining me right now is our friend Bob Ashton. Bob is the guy who originally conceived of this show, and you, together with your team, have put together what I think is the most unbelievable muscle car show in the world. Bob, tell me about it.
Well, I take that as a high compliment because I know you've been to a few shows in your time.
No, first one.
But yeah, this 10th anniversary, 10 years. I can't believe it, you know. When I woke up the first time we opened the doors in 2009, I pinched myself the weekend after, you know, and here we are 10 years later. It's gotten better every year.
It really has, and what I think is so interesting about this show is that in the early days, on year one, you had an experienced background in doing car shows, but you wanted to do something different. And maybe in those days we weren't sure that it was going to be successful. What was the impetus and the motivation to do Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals?
Well, I'm, as you know, very passionate about the muscle car world. You know, that's where my heart lies from way back when, and because of that, I had pitched the original concept to my former employer, and they just didn't see it. They didn't see it as being something that would last, and kind of felt that there was no legs under it. It wasn't worth investing in doing that, and fortunately, due to circumstances, we found some guys that felt there was a real good reason to pursue that dream, my dream.
Well, what's cool about this show is it's different, not only because we've got a variety of muscle cars here, but also the caliber of cars is different than you'll find at many shows. A lot of times you go to a show and there's some cool cars, no doubt, some movie cars, celebrity kind of stuff, but you don't see things like what's behind us here.
Well, yeah, that's a bit of an understatement. You know, we spend a whole year working on it to find the rarest of the rare, the best of the best. And, you know, this group of cars right here goes back, I go back close to 30 years with the owner. And as you know, we lost him recently. So to be able to be the person in the position to present these cars and bring them out is just, you know, it means so much to me. And, you know, I can't even express it. You know, 3 years ago, we were up in the office above the show with Steven, and we discussed how his friend, he looked down over the Hemi E-body convertibles, and he said, "Bob, this is great. The only problem is you're never going to be able to top it." And Steven kind of gave me that look. He had a certain look that those of you who know him know. And he had that little smile, and he said, "Bob, we might not be able to top it, but we sure can rival it." And I knew exactly what he meant.
Well, what he's talking about is our departed friend, Steven Giuliano. And a few years ago, in this very room, there was 27 Hemi-powered Chrysler E-body convertible cars on display, probably the biggest collection ever in one place. And yeah, a high watermark to beat. But this little collection here, we're going to talk about these cars for a sec. What are we looking at behind us?
What we have are the actual rapid transit system caravan cars from 1970 and 1971. And I think maybe another point that needs to be brought out is that these cars have never been shown together to the public anywhere, anytime, even back in the day, because they were built to be shown in 2 different years. We had the 1970 CUDA, which is not here, the 1970 Duster. Those cars were shown together along with a variety of other goodies and trinkets and speed parts. And then in 1971, when they came out with the new B-body design, the 1970 Roadrunner that you see in the front was retired. So that was replaced with the 71 that is right behind us now. And what they did is they updated the Duster. Formerly was candy apple red with nice custom paint. Now, as you see, lime green. So even back in the day, these cars were never side by side.
It's amazing that they survived this long, and now that they're here.
Well, and it all goes to Steven. You know, Steven was the first guy that had that true passion. It was never about being in the spotlight. Steven was here every year. You know, he had the Mod Top CUDA here. He had the Diamante here. He had a Cobra here, and always supported everything I did. We're very, very close friend of mine, and you know, we lost him, and he made a commitment to me, and he held to it even not here. I had the distinct honor last week. My son and I flew to California, so we had made arrangements in advance with Steven before he passed, so that I would get access to the warehouse and the collection where I personally loaded the cars. And Steven told me I was the 4th person who drove all 3 of these cars. So
that's really incredible.
That was, talk about a high watermark now. Oh.
Well, Bob, we could talk all night about the features in the show, but we have over 24 people lined up here tonight that have brought cars to this show that we're going to talk to. So, like I said, we could go forever on this stuff, but we want to give everybody else a chance.
Absolutely.
But what I'm going to point out next is our next guest, Mr. Chuck Miller, who had a little something to do with building this car. So we'll get to him in a sec. But Bob, I want to thank you wholeheartedly for doing this show and for having us. And earlier today, Kelly and I were spontaneously presented with a little award from the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals as Enthusiast of the Year, an incredible thing. I can't thank you enough for that.
Could not be a better recipient. And I, as you mentioned, I want to point out to everybody that was not just for you.
No.
Because we both share something in that our wives support what we do 110%. And you and I get a lot of the FaceTime, a lot of the credit. Everybody knows who we are. A lot of people don't know Vicki and Kelly other than from the background or seeing a name or getting an email. It's like, quite honestly, you and I both know neither one of us could do what we do without their support. So that's why the award was given to both Kevin and Kelly.
Well, it means the world to us, and we both cried, I'm not going to lie. And again, we really appreciate it. Congratulations on another awesome show, 10 years. Ladies and gentlemen, a little round of applause for Bob Ash and the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals for making this happen. Thanks again, buddy. We're going to move on and talk to some more people.
But here's to the next 10 years.
Oh, at least the next 10 years. So thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
At this point, I'm going to bring Mr. Chuck Miller up. And Chuck, we're going to kind of walk around the front of this car. Now, let's talk to Chuck here. We're going to bring Ben, our cameraman, over. Ben has been shooting some video of this car. Now, Chuck, Your involvement with this, you've been building custom cars for a long time.
Long time, yeah, long time.
So tell me about what this one was all about and what we're looking at today.
71 Runner, RTS. I built that brand new. They dropped it off from Chrysler, and that's when we started on it. Roughly 3 months to build it, because the show's got to go. We got to have it done. Got to go. And we were under the gun to get it done in time. Harry Bradley, California, he was the designer of all of the RTS cars. So when I built the car, that's what I had, was a 3/4 front and a 3/4 rear drawing, and that was it.
Well, Harry Bradley's drawings were cool too.
Oh, absolutely. He was, #1 back then. Oh yeah, still is.
Yeah.
But Chrysler wanted to do a road show, dealerships. So they contact Bob Larrabee at the time. Bob was a big promoter of Promotions Incorporated. He had car shows all over the country. So Chrysler went to Bob, said, we want to do this road show, but we need builders. So Bob approached me, knowing what I had done before in the past with cars that I had built and all that. So he contacted me about building it and said, can you build it? And sure. Yeah. So, but the CUDA was the first one. The RTS CUDA, and then the Runner came after that.
And it's super cool. There's all kinds of really neat late 60s, early 70s custom touches. The headlights are done, the hood, the rear wing. How did you build this car? What are these materials that you use?
Well, the whole car is metal, except the hood and the deck lid. Those are glass. Made clay model of it, made molds, and then made the two pieces. But the rest of the car, it's all steel.
Outstanding. And here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals, not only do you have this car on display, but in a minute we're going to get a look at the Hurst Olds. So it's fun for me that you're here to tell us firsthand about these kind of cars. Again, it's things that you don't see at other car shows, only events like this.
Oh, absolutely.
Chuck's here signing autographs. If you can come by to the show tomorrow, grab a poster and meet the man behind this. Chuck, we really appreciate you coming out.
It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're only at the very beginning, folks. This is the first car we've looked at here at the 2018 MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. We've got a lot more to come, but right now we're going to step away for a minute. We're going to show a clip from a previous MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals while we get set up for the next car. So I'm Kevin Ostie coming to you from MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals After Hours Live. Hurst Olds prototype car. This is one that has special unique features not found on any of the production cars. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this car.
Truly a piece of history. Everybody give him a round of applause. This is truly a special car.
We'll return to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals with more after-hours live coverage brought to you by the Mecum Auction Company soon. But first, let's take a look back at one of the highlights of the past 10 years of the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals, there are displays of invitational cars where they group together certain cars that are significant. And this time we're here with Mark Bednar, who brought out his 1970 Olds 442 W30 in the W30 Invitational. And Mark, what I really liked about this car right away is the color.
Well, it's one of the special order colors you could get in 1970. This Asian aqua color is pretty rare. I love the color too. I just bought the car a few months ago. It was just restored by Gary Riley at Level 1 Restoration in Colorado. And I've got like 5 other cars that are 1970 W30s. I've got a 69 W30. My first one I bought when I was 18. And so that's what kind of hooked me. Yeah. So I just love this stuff, and I love the body style of these cars. And they were very strong, and they handled the road good, like almost like a Camaro. And 370 horse from the factory, aluminum intake manifold, 4-speed. They made 96 of these in a convertible 4-speed. And it's a real rare car. It's one of two that they know of that came back from Canada into the U.S. So
this was originally sold in Canada?
It was originally sold in Alberta, Canada, in Edmonton.
Wow.
And I've got the GM documentation for it. And
well, I mean, this is definitely not something you see every day, and it not only does it have the look, but it's also got the power and the handling and all the rest of it. So we're real happy that you brought it out, and I want to personally congratulate you because I made this one our pick of the show.
Really?
So there's an award you get, courtesy of VATV and the MuscleCar Corvette Nationals.
Thank you very much.
You're going to get a little trophy with that.
Really? Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing it out.
Really
awesome
nice.
car.
Thank you for everything.
You got it.
Appreciate it.
I'm Kevin Ostie, and this is After Hours Live, and our coverage tonight is presented by the Mecum Auction Company. Now, one of the cool things about the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals is that there are cars that are freshly restored and unveiled here at this event. And earlier today, my friend Gary Riley, we pulled the cover on this unbelievable Oldsmobile. Gary, tell me, what is this car?
Well, this is the 1969 Hurst's prototype car. So this was like an engineering exercise to find out how a Hurst's was going to look for 1969. So they had a variety of hood scoops and wings and different things, wheels, tires, stripe combinations that they worked out on this car until they arrived at what a 69 Hurst's was going to look like. So fortunately for us in history, they recorded a lot of this with a lot of nice photographs. And we were able to, when this car was found and discovered, it went through a couple of owners, we were able to recreate exactly how it looked in the most famous prototype rendition.
The amazing thing to me is that this car was built, it got out there, and then it kind of disappeared and was identified. It certainly didn't look like this when it was re-identified. Were the signature pieces still intact or there, or how'd it go?
Well, no, it looked exactly like a production line Hurst's. So all of the historic pieces were totally lost. In fact, the rear wing, the elephant tusk wing, was thrown away when they decided that they weren't going to go with that. They just tossed it. So the one thing that remained on the car for years was the pearl paint job, and that was an indicator that it was something special. And so when a gentleman had this car, I believe he was out of Texas, and he restored it, just did a kind of a cosmetic restoration. He initially didn't know it was anything special. So as they were doing some of the work to it, they started finding some weird telltale signs that this car was something special. Plus, it was regular 442. It was early for a Hurst. There was all kinds of things that weren't adding up. And so it was really neat that they were able to put the entire history together, almost every single owner, right back to when it was brand new. And it was actually used as a demo car, for Hurst for a couple of years. And they had a lot of fun with this car. Did a lot of neat stuff with it.
Yeah, well, so a lot of the neat stuff that he's talking about, I think our cameraman's been showing the hood scoop, which is unique to the car. Of course, the gold stripes on the white pearl paint. But as we talk about this thing, we've got custom touches in the front. The rear of the car, to me, is probably some of the more interesting elements. You mentioned what they call the elephant tusk rear wing, and also the rear glass. Tell me about the wing and then the glass.
So the wing is very radical, comes out around the sides of the car. Literally built that just by scaling the taillights and looking at the pictures. They obviously thought it was too much to go into production with it, expense-wise, and it sticks out where it could be broken off. So it didn't make sense to use the rear wing. The rear glass, on the other hand, they continued the Hurst's stripe that goes down the roof right through the back window, and they like that. But they feared that the Department of Transportation would not accept, that obstruction through the back window. So they ultimately gave that a thumbs down as well. The neat part is that the original rear glass had always stayed in the car, and there's evidence of, you know, the original stripe on the glass, which I just scraped away. And so we turned that into a sign that we have out here on display. So a really neat thing. They almost did, but in the end did not.
Anything they almost did. So when it comes to the rest of the running gear, these Hurst cars had 455s in them that you couldn't get in a regular Cutlass platform or 442. Do we still have that?
Yeah, yep, that was the neat thing about these cars. So they went around the corporate ban on engines larger than 400, and so they supposedly the engines were installed at Hurst, but we know now that they were really installed right at the factory, the 455 engine. So that gave this leg up on the rest of the competition in cubic inch, and it's really neat. This has the 455. While it was at Hurst, it at one time had a 517 cubic inch engine, and it was legendary out, you know, on Woodward, and they blew it up in spectacular fashion, and ended up putting a regular service replacement 455 back in it, and it was sold at auction and off to Wisconsin, and that's when its regular life began.
Well, it's an amazing, amazing story. And your shop, Level 1 Restorations, did the resto work on this. It's an incredibly beautiful car. Amazing, amazing work.
Yeah, thank you. The guys at the shop, you know, deserve all the credit. They do all this hard work and make it look like it does, and so really them and Chuck Miller, who originally built the car and all that. We're just really fortunate to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's super cool. We just talked to Chuck a minute ago. He's one of our celebrities here at the 2018 MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. And this car is also one that resides in the Brothers Collection. And if you watch Muscle Car of the Week, you know we feature a lot of cars from the Brothers Collection.
Yeah, and really the whole story of them having this car started with the Hurst Olds convertible that they have. That's one of two. And really, when I saw the article on this car, I don't know, it was maybe in 2012, I really thought, well, that's a car that we need to go after for them to own to go along with the convertible. And it took a few years. It ended up coming to auction, and I was just really excited about that and making phone calls and really having a vision for what actually happened here at that time. And fortunately, my customers stepped up and bought the car, and I think they made a good choice.
Well, absolutely. If you have a one of two, you need to have a one of one.
Absolutely, yeah. The only thing better than one of two is one of ones.
Right on. Well, Gary, thank you so much for sharing the car with us. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Gary Riley, the Hurst Olds convertible, or Hurst Olds prototype. So what we are going to do now is take a little walk. We're going to walk the aisles and go see our featured artist here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals Year 10 and see what Eric's up to. So as we walk, part of the cool things about this show is it's not just the cars. We have a lot of artifacts, a lot of artwork, a lot of automobilia that goes along with it. And the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals organization is really good in the sense that they always acknowledge car artists and fine artists. So this year, we're going to make our way over to the artist of the show. And he's just a couple of steps away. We appreciate you going for the ride. We thought it'd be neat to show you what it looks like when we move the camera in this building because there's so many cool cars around. And here we are joining Eric Schlesinger.
Skellinger, how you doing?
Skellinger, my mistake.
Oh, you're good.
I'm doing great. Eric, so you're the artist of the featured artist this year?
Yeah, we started the whole idea of doing a custom car themed guitar, and it actually stemmed from this show when they did the Color My World display. And I figured, why not do the whole theme of the car where you can actually personalize them and not just do the body color. So and that's kind of how this whole thing got started. So I started building a couple of them after models of cars that I personally own myself and took them around and got some pretty good feedback on them. And then I got together with Bob Ashton, kind of gave him my idea, and he sent me a list and said, here you go, you know, if you can do these, let's do them. We'll spread them out through the show, see how that goes, and here we are again today. So second year, and we're getting a lot of interest and going strong.
I can imagine. So what I love is that when people build custom guitars, a lot of times it's just kind of a novelty item. They'll put a badge from a muscle car on a guitar, but yours. you've got more detail and more elements, and these are real guitars.
Yeah, they're fully functional, and I got a group of clientele, probably a good 20-30% of guys don't play at all, but they love their car, and the fact that they can have this and be a part of the car, and it'll stay with the car longer than any of us are going to be around. Yeah. And it's a neat thing, and it's a great conversation piece, whether you put it in the back window of your car, on the front seat, or prop it on a stand. It's just something that just you don't see that often, and I just thought it was cool, and a lot of people, I guess, are agreeing with me. So,
well, you're absolutely right. It is cool, and we've got them on both sides here. So, tell me about the nitty gritty. What's the body made out of? The neck size? What pickups we're looking at? All the guitar jazz.
We got it's typically a 24 3/4 scale guitar. The center structure is mahogany, and then use a variety of woods for the tops and backs. And I got a standard set of hardware that I use for building, and then as people's personal tastes go as far as upgrades and stuff like that, we work with them.
Right on. So it's truly customizable with not just the color. It's whatever basically somebody wants.
Oh yeah. Yeah, whether it's a certain color, certain pickup, certain wiring, you name it. It's what your imagination and getting it going, kind of putting it all together.
Right on. Well, I think you do a tremendous job. Thank you for being part of the show.
Thank you.
And nothing goes better than hot rods and rock and roll, as we always say, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Eric. We are going to take a couple of steps down the hall again and look at another artist. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Skellinger. And we're going with art of a slightly different medium, our friend Mr. Ed Tilrock. Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. And thank you for this beautiful pencil your wife gave me this morning. I've been using it all day.
Well, there's a little bit of a story here. So Ed Tilrock is known as the nitro-filled pencil. I mean, this gentleman has an ability to create images of depth and shade with a regular pencil that are mind-bending. Plus, you also do stuff in color and paint and everything else. Exactly. So my first question is, your cars always have a level of realism. Do you do this, from memory? You look at photographs? How does this work?
I go to a lot of shows, and I shoot a lot of reference photos, and from that, develop an image and start drawing.
Yeah. Well, the way you draw is, like I said, it's so realistic looking that a lot of times people think it's a black and white photograph.
I have that issue. Sometimes I have a giant pencil about 4 feet long. I'll bring that just so people will look at that and then kind of click and maybe say, oh, maybe this is pencil.
Yeah, well, it's hard to believe that it is, and I really love that when you watermark these things, you put your pencil in the image so people don't steal it and they can see who made it.
Right. I've had a couple people want prints with the watermark in it, and I don't know why. But it works for me.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, so your background, you don't wake up one day and be this world-renowned car artist.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess you take this with the utmost respect. At one point, you had a real job.
I had a real job. I used to do architectural rendering. So if somebody was putting up a new building, I would do the artwork to what it would look like. And in 07, that just all died. I had an office and employees, and that all went away. And I'm like, what am I going to do now? I'm a gearhead, always been a gearhead, and I love to draw. So it was a collision of passions. Yeah. And that's the story. The architecture was in color. So I decided to do pencil artwork in the evenings as a different thing, completely different cars and in pencil. And eventually it was more of that and less of the architecture, and about 5 years ago I stopped doing the architecture. It just wasn't working anymore. So.
Unless somebody wants an image of their car in front of their garage or in front of their favorite building.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Frank Lloyd Wright or something,
I often wondered what he would do with a hot rod design.
He was a car guy. He actually was. He had some coach-built cars. Yeah. He was, design. It's a design thing.
Well, now to get back real quick to this pencil story. So we were recently at the SEMA show in Las Vegas, and Ed was the featured artist there for a couple of years. Yeah. And we found ourselves at the SEMA banquet, and I wanted to get a note written to somebody else, another artist, as a matter of fact, Steve Stanford, and I didn't have a pen, right? And I'm looking around, I'm like, how do I get a pen? So I went to Ed, and I said, this is going to be either a really stupid question or a really brilliant one, but Ed, do you have a pencil?
and I did, and it just so happened I put it in my bag before I went to the banquet. And you were talking about a Riviera. And what was on the pencil?
The word Riviera was the brand of the pencil, probably from the mid-'70s.
Probably, absolutely. So it was meant to be.
It was. So thank you for that. And today I returned it by giving him this America the Beautiful pencil that is probably from the 80s.
That's perfect.
Yeah. All right, Ed. Well, listen,
buddy.
thank you so much.
All
We
right.
appreciate you coming out. Great work.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's great being here. Terrific year. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Tilrock. And how about it for our studio audience? This is really great.
The best.
Yeah, they are. All right, so at this point, Ed, we're going to take another walk and look at some more cars. So as we make our way throughout the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals, this whole place is over 550 cars, I believe, on display. And we are just scratching the surface. We are at the front side of this event. And in this this double row here, we'll just stop for a second, kind of gaze down this row. These are cars that were from the Scat Pack and Rapid Transit System advertising campaign from Mopar in 1970 and 71, and all of them in different colors, and that was the whole thing, is the high impact colors. And you just walk in the front door, and this is what you see, right? It's very cool stuff. We're going to get a look at one of those cars now, this bright green Plymouth back here with the wing on it. But we'll just kind of take you for a little tour as we get there and meet up with our owner. And we did think, you know, we cut away to a commercial every once in a while on this live presentation because, you know, sometimes we need to reposition or whatnot. But at the same time, we thought it'd be fun to show you around, you know, as we're walking around. So it might be a little bit shaky and a little bit crazy, but we also wanted to make sure that you got a chance to see the show. So right now I am joined by Frank Finkenbinder.
Nice to meet you, Kevin.
Good to see you, Frank. And Frank, tell me, what did you bring out this year?
We have a 1970 Plymouth Superbird that was bought originally by my father in 1970. So it's a original family ownership. I drove it my senior year in high school and all through college, so I'm very familiar with the car. We have a 440 6-barrel under the hood. It's got the 3-speed automatic console, bucket seats. You know, very limited options. We joked that the option of the car is an AM radio. So it, you know, it was very basic, but a lot of fun to drive back in the day. We parked it actually in the early 80s, and it wasn't driven for many, many years. In 2014, we took it to Hodge Restoration and had a complete restoration done on the car. As you can see from the photos, they did a beautiful job on it. And so now it's kind of a family heirloom. My daughter and son, you know, have really enjoyed the car since we've had it restored, and so it's just really been a fun thing for the family.
Now, Frank, we hear a lot of these stories today about these wing cars because they are such an unusual car. And now, of course, they're worth a lot of money. You know, everybody really likes this icon of this crazy, wild Mopar. But we hear stories that when they were new, they weren't always hot sellers because they were so unusual, especially in a color like this.
That's true.
Did you ever learn why your dad gravitated to this car and what the motivation was to get it?
Well, actually, it was the dealership that contacted my dad. My dad was a USAC Life member, had been on a number of Indianapolis 500 racing crews and had raced much of his life. And so when this car came to the dealership, they contacted him, and they said, "We've got a car down here, we'd like to have you come by." And my dad said, "Well, I really don't need another car right now." And they said, "No, seriously, we've got this car in, and we're afraid if it falls in the wrong hands, somebody's going to get hurt with it. Would you at least come down and take a look at it?" So he did. They made him a deal on the car, and interestingly enough, he bought the car for me. I didn't even have a beginner's permit at the time. My mom was not too happy about him buying this car for me, but he said, "No, you don't understand. Every officer in the county will know who owns that car. So if he doesn't keep his nose clean, they'll meet him in the driveway. They won't have to chase him. They'll know who has the car." So
very nice. Boy, what a problem to have. You know, I'm sorry, Dad bought me a 440 wing car.
Yeah, it was. But as you said, it was not. well respected back in the day. NASCAR was not near as popular as it is today, so the car got a lot of jokes. It's still considered one of the ugliest cars ever built, which I don't understand, because I think that the lines on the car are really nice. I loved it from the moment we saw it, and of course, knowing that Richard Petty was going to race it in the 500, or a car similar to this in the 500, just made it all that more interesting to a racing family. So.
Oh, yeah. So, of course, this was done to advance the aerodynamics of NASCAR. And, of course, Buddy Baker famously went 202 miles an hour and in a wing car with a 426 Hemi. Yes. But a lot of people don't realize that many of these cars were very common on the interior, bench seat, column shift kind of things, and some 383s.
Yes. NASCAR required them to build 2 cars for every dealership. And it was kind of late in the game, because Richard Petty had been driving Ford in '69, and then he said if they would build a wing car similar to the Dodge Daytona, that he would consider switching back to Plymouth. So consequently, it was a mad dash for them to meet the NASCAR homologation, which, interestingly enough, of the 1920 that were built, this is number 78. So it's an extremely early car in the production. But yes, they basically grabbed 1920 Roadrunners off the assembly line at Lynch Road, took them to Claire Point and converted them to Superbirds. And, they really didn't care whether it was bench seat, bucket seats. There were 7 different colors, I think, and even a couple that were painted incorrectly. And it was quite a dash to meet the NASCAR homologation.
Yeah. An amazing story and such a cool car. Frank, thanks again for bringing it out.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 70 Superbird of Frank Finkenbinder. Here we are at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals, looking at some of the cars in our After Hours Live program. We're going to take a short break, and we will be back with more live from the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals After Hours Live. Of After Hours Live is brought to you by the Mecum Auction Company, the world's largest collector car auction house. Visit Mecum.com today to start your own Mecum experience as a buyer, seller, or spectator. The experience begins at Mecum.com. And by Original Parts Group, premium quality GM restoration and performance parts since 1982. We'll be back live right after these, so stick around. The V8 Speed and Resto Shop is a full-service restoration and performance center. We can turn your classic car, hot rod, or muscle car into the ride of your dreams. We do everything from repairs on old cars to building cutting-edge muscle cars that look original but have today's technology under the skin. You can learn more about our shop, v8speedshop.com, or give us a call today at 314-783-8325 to talk about building your dream car.
Open the breakfast?
Sure thing.
Got it.
3, 4, and sold $41,000 Frank's Way.
Happy birthday.
We're back at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals 2018 for our After Hours Live show. And part of the fun of doing this live is that it's interactive. And all over the world, we have friends that are watching this and making social comments. I'm joined now by our friend Zach Straits. Zach, good to see you.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Zach is a guy who covers events for a bunch of different media and for yourself, and you seem to be always at a car show somewhere. What do you think about this one?
Oh, this is awesome. This is the best show out there. I go to a lot, and this is my favorite. I come every year, the 6th year in a row, about 6 different cars. So just great times.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. 6 years, 6 cars. Now, give me a little bit of insight on some of the feedback that we're getting. I know that, we're spending some time at some of these cars and talking to some people. I want to stress that we're getting there. We're making our way all the way around the show. This isn't going to be a quick thing, but what are we hearing from the people?
Oh, yeah. People are liking what they see. Naturally, they wanted to get to the cars. That was one of the things they were saying. But, yeah, we got people from all over the world watching. I mean, people's popping up. We're watching on the V8 TV page right now. We're watching on YouTube live with the V8 TV page, and it's awesome. People are enjoying what they're seeing. So
Well, that's great to hear. That's great to hear because I'm having fun doing it. I hope you're having a good time.
Oh, having a blast.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Oh, yeah. No, you got it. You got it. Well, Zach, we're going to touch base with you periodically throughout the night and see how the social scene's going.
Gotcha.
And maybe get your feedback if you see something cool.
All right, you got it.
And we'll catch up with you shortly.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Zach Straits, ladies and gentlemen. So right now I'm standing here in the Mecum Auctions display, and we'd like to personally thank Mecum for helping us not only produce this episode tonight, but also the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals for many, many years. And we're going to take a quick walk and talk and look at some of the cars they've got here. These, all the way down at the end here, we've got a Roadster that has something, it's a Ford GT40 race car, but it's apparently missing something, which is kind of unusual. And this GT40 is one of the cars that Ford was using to race. Now, if you know the famous story of what the GT40 did in 1966 and 1967, the GT40 was the platform that finally beat Ferrari at Le Mans. And there's a great American racing tale about how Edsel Ford really wanted to, and Henry Ford too, really wanted to beat Ferrari at their own game of racing on a world stage. So the GT40 was developed to be a race car, and eventually in '67 it beat them. But this one's different because it's got an open roof. It's a Roadster, and there was only a handful of these built. And what's special about it is they found that not having that open, you know, the roof support there, it wasn't good for racing. The car wasn't very stiff, so it kind of got shelved. But today, you can buy this car because it's going to be up for auction at the upcoming Mecum auction in Kissimmee, Florida. And as we walk through our display here at Mecum, not only do we have that amazing piece of Ford history, but we've got this amazing piece of Ford history. It's the Shelby GT500 Super Snake. And what's cool about this particular car is this is a 427 cubic inch. It's the only one built with the 427. And you note the white stripe on the tire. This was a Goodyear tire test mule for Shelby, essentially, and Goodyear. And Shelby, Carroll Shelby, had a very viable business selling Goodyear tires. So, of course, they teamed up together to produce this car and made this awesome GT500. This is a huge piece of history. And moving on to this Chrysler Imperial sitting next to it. Now, this is a car that looks like an amazing, diamond crisp restoration, but in reality, it's a Resto mod, right? So when we glance inside, we see beautiful leather, and in the dash, we see the RCA Victor record player of all things, which was an option back then. You could play records in your car as you drove down the road. Now it's got a modern audio system that's hiding the modern stuff. Under the hood, it looks like a Chrysler Firepower, like a 392 Hemi from back in the day, or maybe one of the smaller ones. But this is, in fact, a modern Chrysler Hemi made to look old. Just a crazy, awesome car. But I think one of my favorites here at this Mecum display this year is another one that's coming up for auction at the Kissimmee, Florida auction. And this is the Tom McMullen Roadster. And this one was owned by Tom McMullen. And McMullen, you might be familiar if you're into car magazines. You've heard of McMullen Argus Publishing. That was what this car was all about. McMullen Argus, of course, produced popular hot rodding magazine and a lot of famous car magazines, kind of competed with Hot Rod magazine, and Tom drove this awesome Deuce Roadster a lot in Southern California. And today, well, this is another one that you can take home. So what's really cool about going to a Mecum auction is not only do you get to buy cool cars, they bring them out to shows like this, and these are top-level, super desirable cars with amazing significance. As they say, the bidding experience starts at Mecum.com. If you want to get in the game, if you buy it, you got to take me for a ride. That's all I got to say. We've got a lot more coming up from the 2018 MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. I'm Kevin Ostie for After Hours Live. Return to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals with more After Hours Live coverage brought to you by the Mecum Auction Company soon. But first, let's take a look back at one of the highlights of the past 10 years of the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. A lot of people think the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals is purely a show featuring original stock muscle cars, but Zach, you've got something here that is legendary and definitely not stock.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's Gas Ronda's real 1965 AFX 65 Mustang.
Awesome, awesome, legendary car.
Oh yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the history of this thing.
The history was there was 11 cars made from Ford. They were actually 289 hypo cars. Ford took the motors out of them or didn't put motors in them and then sent them to Holman Moody for them to be turned into factory race cars. And this car here was given to Gas Ronda, California racer, for the sum of $1. And from there, he was to campaign it in AHRA and NHRA racing. Unfortunately, the first car that Gas got was exactly like this one. It was totaled. The right axle broke and took him into cross the lane and through a fence and hit a telephone pole. I've got pictures of what that car looked like. Ford came along, did a investigation of what happened and determined it wasn't driver error, and they gave him another car. So that is this car here. At that point, he campaigned it the rest of the year and multiple wins. I think the quickest time was like a 10:30 in the quarter mile, and because of Gas's persona, he was probably one of the more popular drivers because he was a handsome, dapper guy. Him and his crew always dressed to the nines. I mean, they were just a good-looking crew. When they showed up at the track, you knew they were there.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
And they always kept the car looking good.
Oh, yeah.
And they performed well.
Oh, yeah.
And so this being in '65 is right when FX racing was really starting to explode.
Yes.
But at this point, the car still looks like a Mustang.
Yeah, yeah. There's still a steel body for the back half. The front nose and doors are fiberglass. But this is sort of the precursor to funny cars. I mean, the next Gas Ronda car was still a 65 or 66 Mustang, but it was a fiberglass car with the nose stretched 18 to 20 inches. So yeah, this car was really only raced 1 year. So.
I think that's one of my more favorite aspects about that time period is it looks like a car that you could have bought before they really went nuts, which are cool too.
Right.
And these camera motors are insane. Tell me what kind of power we're looking at that this one would make.
Whenever Ford produced them, the idea was to run NASCAR with them, and that's the time when all exotic hemispherical head motors was getting outlawed, Mopar included. And so these straight out of the box were like 606 horsepower, and then from there, who knows what these guys took them to. So the neat thing about the camera was it had a 6.5 foot long timing chain that run between the two heads and two cams. And everybody said they were problematic because the chain would break. Well, really the problem was, in most of them, was the guy's right foot, because without a valve train with the cams running directly to the valves, you didn't get that signal to say, I'm about to blow up. It would just keep on winding and winding and winding until something popped, and the chain was the weak link.
Yeah. Well, have you ever seen one of these with that front cover off? That chain is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the car being restored basically to as raced specs.
Yes.
What are you guys doing with it now?
Really, it's taking it around to shows for people to enjoy it. We're actually taking it to an old drag strip in Waynesboro, Virginia, and to put on display and do some photo shoot of it for some possible magazine coverage. So,
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals?
Oh, this is amazing. This is amazing. Nick Smith, the owner of the car, has always wanted to come to this event, but his schedule wouldn't permit it. And so I was able to pick it up at Detroit and bring it over here. And Nick has an amazing collection of. He also has the long nose Gas Ronda car and the Dick Landy silver and black car. So definitely worth a trip to Stuart, Florida, to meet Nick and see his amazing car collection.
Is his car collection open to the public? Is it a museum?
It is. It's not. It's basically by appointment only. And but he has a website, and you can contact him through the website. It's factorylightweights.com.
Something definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, definitely.
Zach, thank you for bringing it out.
You're welcome.
I love
Thank
the
you.
car.
Appreciate it. Okay.
So we are back live at the 2018 MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals with our After Hours Live program brought to you by Mecum Auctions and by our friends at OPGI, Original Parts Group, Inc. And now I find myself in front of a really cool Mopar. This is a 1971 Plymouth Duster. And Carl Straub, you helped bring this car out here today?
We did, yep, the family. We put the car together and brought it out here from MCACN. Rare and unusual cars as usual. Always something cool to see here. TX9 formal black with orange interior. Very unusual. Not what you think about when you think about a Duster.
No, and that's a very cool color combination, one of my favorites. And to my left over here is Adriana Straub. And Adriana, you've been working here at the show, but you're also a racer.
Yes, I am.
So tell me what you wheel down the track.
I drive a 1970s Oldsmobile Cutlass.
And what type of racing do you get involved with that one?
Drag strip racing at the Pure Stock.
Now, the Pure Stock stuff is very cool because these are cars that appear almost factory original, but they run a lot harder.
Yep, Pure Stock muscle car drags, also a great show. Always something really cool to see there. Cars have to appear completely stock. They have to go through checks to make sure that they have the right camshafts, exhaust tires, and it's a lot of fun. You don't have to be the fastest to show up and have a great time.
So tell me about the driveline and some of the details of the Duster. What are we looking at?
It's the original numbers matching 340 4-barrel, 275 horse, automatic transmission. It came with a V24 blackout hood that has the wedge, 340 wedge decal on the top of the hood with a flat black. One of maybe 80 black cars produced, and the orange interior is down under 0.5%, so there's just a handful in existence. Very good car, 391 gears. These cars usually run very strong. Beat up on big block cars all the time. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, because they're lightweight and high-powered. What's the transmission in this one?
This is a 727 automatic with 391 positive traction. These cars are mid-13s stock, and where you want to go from there is all up to you.
Right, so now tell me, how are you connected with Adriana here?
This is my niece. She does race a 70 442 W30. She runs a 13:12 is her best time now at 105. She's really good at the light. You can be surprised. These girls are fast. And as a family, we try to get younger people involved, which we need to do. Our hobby is a lot of elder people around here, and we got to do what we can to get younger people involved.
So, Adriana, what was it about playing with old cars that got you interested in this stuff? Obviously, you've got a strong family connection. Everybody seems to have a cool car in your family.
Well, it all started when I was younger, about a toddler. I used to ride in a booster seat in the back of a COPO 440 6-pack. So my dad would test run me in that, and just like the thrill of it just got me going. He just loved to hear my laugh in the back seat. He's like, "You want to go again?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it again." And ever since, just going out there and enjoying the time of my life with my dad and spending time with my uncle and having our own business at Pro Auto Works. We would go to the drag strip together. I would watch them, and I grew up watching them, and here I am following their footsteps.
Right on. So what's your favorite part of the sport? Is it more the driving? Do you work on the cars? What do you like the best?
I like more the adrenaline of the feel. People like say, "Are you nervous at all?" I'm like, no, I'm more like thrilled, excited to be right there on the track. I like every time I say, I'm like, I want to go faster. I want to go faster. This is not fast enough for me.
Yeah, she's going to be trouble.
Yes, we'll deal with it.
Well, Carl, thank you so much for bringing it out. Adriana, thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl and Adriana getting the next generation involved and bringing out cool stuff. We're going to take another little walk here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals down this way, where we're going to look at some of the advertising memorabilia that goes along with this Rapid Transit Scat Pack display. And we're going to take a quick look at some of these prints that these guys have brought out. Let's do a quick lap in here. So it's kind of a chronology of advertising. Some, the stuff from the 1960s, 63 Dodge here, which starts off pretty sedate, even though you've got, the ladies behind the curtain here. Why don't we slip into something more comfortable? That ends up into, this Ramrod Dodge ad with the Scat Pack. And I'm joined now.
I'm Ken Hanna.
I'm with Ken Hanna.
Actually, everything in this booth is original art. What these actually symbolize is this would be the artist's proof that they would use to sell this advertising. They would take it to the marketing manager, and they would get approval for this ad. So this is the concept drawing, to the final execution.
So this is, when you say this original art, I can see that is an actual drawing, and then the tape border on it, and it's kind of pasted up.
Same here. This is the original concept that would actually go into this then. The concept for the catalog here, one of one, approved by the client, and then it would go into the catalog here, final art.
So before we get too far away from this is really neat to see, kind of the difference between, the concepts. So you'll notice the words here, I don't know if you can read that in the camera, but this is just placeholder language. This doesn't say anything. It's all, yeah, they call it Greeking it in.
We always use the year before car for the angles to get approval. The layout would not change. These are really placeholders, even though that's a 69 and that's a 69 car. Then they would have approval for the photography, which would be 70 cars then. That's final.
This is fascinating, and I'm going to glance around here to see, because there's a very famous ad from a Chrysler product that was advertised and never built. And I see it right over there. Yeah, let's take a look back over here. So, Ken, tell me about the Challenger TA and this ad.
This actually was a photograph of a 1970 Challenger TA. It's not my favorite photograph. The lens is too long and everything like that. They used the 70 TA, but you can see the brush marks down here. If you look really closely at the grille, this is actually painted on. So this is the actual photograph that they used to create the 71 TA. This is the 346 pack is blocked off. It was used in this ad. It was only seen in Hot Rod magazine in September of 1970, and then Chrysler decided they were going to get out of Trans Am racing, and so that car was never produced.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. They ran the ad, but there was no 71 Challenger TA, and people speculated for years, and now you know the real story of what this was all about.
These are all the original concept drawings, pen and ink of the Scat Pack B. There's 9 of them here. These are all one of one. They're all drawn by the hand of this man here. He created the Dodge Scat Pack B.
Very, very cool. Some of this stuff, you could look at this stuff for hours and learn the story behind these things. Why, did Dodge really gravitate towards the cartoony looking over-the-top imagery that we saw? What was it that they wanted to do?
Dodge is totally different. Okay, Dodge was one client, one advertising agency. It was BBD&O Detroit. Okay, so they had a different client. Plymouth was different. So the Dodge actually stuff would be an exaggerated wide-angle lens like you see here in the dark, like you see in the Challenger. Now it was Plymouth, which was a different advertising agency, which was Y&R, that then would do the rapid transit system poster here. This is the original art that was used to make the big poster that I think about half the people that have stopped by say they have in this place. But this is the artist rendering for that poster.
Yeah, and then, so Plymouth, of course, being more over the top than Dodge. And I love the giant Roadrunner head coming out.
Yes. The art director, after he was done shooting this picture, shot in the dry lake beds of California, near Victorville. This is a paper mache head. It is about 6 foot tall, and the art director then put that bird, the head of the bird, in his office.
Nice, nice, incredible stuff. Well, Ken,
top here that they just came.
Yeah, definitely. This is a tremendous display. Again, it's something that you don't see at regular car shows, but it's things that you do see here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals.
This really, I mean, when you really think about it, this is what created the advertising that made these people buy those cars.
Yep. You're right. It's so compelling, and we appreciate you taking the time to share them with us. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you very much.
Ken Hahn here showing us around some of the advertising. We have a gentleman named Diego Rosenberg, who is an author who wrote a book about the advertising that we're so accustomed to seeing. Diego, come on over here for a sec. Now, Diego, you wrote a book called Selling the Muscle Car, and let's talk a little bit about what this book is focused on.
Well, the different manufacturers took a different approach in how to market to the youth market and to the general high-performance population, and this book basically explains how each manufacturer what they did. Like, for example, AMC didn't have a lot of money, so they had to do a lot more grassroots things. GM couldn't be into racing. After 1963, there was a racing ban. So what did GM do to try to get the youth market in ways that Ford and Mopar were able to? That's what the book's about.
Very cool. So a lot of people don't know these stories about, how you hear it all today. How do we reach the youth market? How do we find the next generation and get them excited? Open the book up and show us a little bit of, some of the advertising artwork that we're talking about. So you go way back.
I kind of have like a preface and get in a little bit into the history with racing, and it's basically like the dry lakes and NHRA and NASCAR as it was picking up, and then even like Studebaker with their Bonneville runs, and then I start with Pontiac, and I go through General Motors, and the order that I chose, I thought Pontiac was appropriate to go first, then Chevrolet, then Oldsmobile, and then Buick, and then I go into Ford, and then Chrysler, AMC, and Studebaker.
Very cool. They're all represented. So if you're interested in any of these muscle cars and race cars, and you want to learn, what these ads were that we were just talking about, they can pick this book up. Diego, where can we get a copy?
You can get a copy from me, which would be Diego Rosenberg at me.com, but also you can get it from Amazon if you're not interested in getting a signed copy, let's say.
A special version.
Mm-hmm.
Diego, thank you for showing it to us.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Diego Rosenberg here at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nats. We're going to take a little walk, and this is it's 2018. So what that means to car fanatics is that we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of 1968. And every year here at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, they do a bunch of invitational displays. We've been in this Scat Pack Rapid Transit one, but there's a class of 1968 display that's pretty remarkable, and these are cars that were high watermark muscle cars back in 1968. They're all represented here. There's a lot of Hurst Oldsmobiles. These two cars here that's a Shelby prototype that was lost for years and years and years, and here it is on display, ready to check it out. All around us in this area is the Hurst Hemi Superstock Invitational. And if you just kind of glance down this row, we're seeing the Sox and Martin car and all these Hemi race cars, Herb McCandless right in front of us. These are legitimate, many times original or restored Hemi-powered race cars that are worthy of a show all on their own. It's just these... This whole display, this display here is all Hurst Oldsmobiles from 1968. We saw the 69 prototype in the front earlier. These are the silver and black cars, and it's rare to see one of them at a show, much less car after car after car after car with a convertible in the middle, right? So as we look down this aisle, I see a 68 Chevy Biscayne, and it's all black, and it's very sinister looking. And at this point, I want to take a look at this car for a sec. I'm going to stand over here and talk to the owner. Now, your name is Dave, and I butchered your last name over and over again.
Bongazone.
Bongazone. And Dave, this car not only looks new, it's a 68 427 Biscayne, but it basically is new.
Yes, it has 1,066 original miles.
You hear that, folks? 1,066 miles on this car as it sits from new. Yeah. So the big question is, how do you have a car with the 427 in it and a Biscayne, which is a big car, but it's a pretty lightweight car, designed to be raced and beat on, and only have 1,000 miles on it?
Well, I guess people buy cars and just let them sit just to be on a shelf and use another car to get beat, and this one was always sat on a shelf.
Do you know much about the history of that short-lived mileage of this car?
The original owner was Jennings Summerall, and he lived in East Point, Georgia. The car was built in Georgia. It was sold through East Point Chevrolet. He sold the car in 1978 as a pair. He had a 1970 LS6 Chevelle, a red one with 30 miles. He sold both these cars as a pair to a collector in Florida, and they got split up from there. Huh. And then it went through 6 collectors before I purchased it 3 years ago in 2016.
Now, forgive me for asking again, but what was his occupation, the guy that had these originally?
He owned a trucking company.
Yeah, interesting. You hear these stories about these cars that, like you say, get put on a shelf and you never hear anything about them, and then all of a sudden they surface, and it's like, what kind of time capsule did this come from?
He did drag race. I talked to his wife, and I talked to his son. He had a 62 Biscayne that he drag raced in a 55 Chevrolet. And I spoke with the wife after I bought it. She still lives at the address that's on the dealer invoice. And she's 87 years old. And she said to me, "Was that black car? He never did drive that black car." And that was the story. And he died in '96. And I have all the documentation, every bit of paperwork other than the window sticker to the car.
Yeah, and it's not just an old car, it's a 427 Biscayne. What's the transmission in this one?
It is an M22, which they only made 124 in 1968 of the B-body cars.
So it's a full-size car, M22 Muncie 4-speed with a 427, and these made, what was the horsepower rating originally?
425.
425, yeah. And so now that it only has 1,000 miles, how do you feel about driving this thing? Do you put your foot in, or will you just push it around?
I purchased it St. Patrick's Day 2016 with 747 miles, and it has 1,066 now. So I use it about 100 miles a year, to keep the heartbeat going.
Yeah, to keep the heartbeat going. Nice, nice. Well, listen, we really appreciate you bringing it out here to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. This is just one of the many incredible cars we're going to look at tonight. We appreciate you tuning in wherever you are in the world. We're sharing this all over the place on V8TV, on our Mecum friends are sharing it, OPGI, the MuscleCar Place, HTP Welders, Rocket Racing Wheels, plus the YouTube channels and MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals channel. So people are getting to see this car. It's getting more looks than miles, at this point.
It has more miles than a trailer.
Yeah, more miles than a trailer. So we're going to be back in just a minute with more from the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. I'm Kevin Ostie here at After Hours Live. Return to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals with more After Hours Live coverage brought to you by the Mecum Auction Company soon. But first, let's take a look back at one of the highlights of the past 10 years of the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. Cool muscle cars and car magazines go hand in hand. I mean, you kind of can't have one without the other. And here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals, there's a really neat display behind. We have cars laid out as if they were in a cover shoot, which they actually were in a cover shoot. And Terry, your GTO is kind of leading the charge here.
Right in front.
Yeah. So what is this display?
This display is the Muscle Car Review magazine. It was a pre-convention issue photo shoot. And they took a muscle car from each of the manufacturers. Last year I was lucky to have my American Motors Javelin AMX in the display. But you see a GM car, you see a Pontiac, you see a Chevelle, you see a Plymouth Belvedere, you've got a Ford Mustang. So it's a duplication of the magazine cover shot.
Very cool. And your GTO drew me in like a fly to a bright light. I mean, this car is beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Tell me the story on this, because I'm sure there's a good one.
It is a good one, and it's quite lengthy. I've actually had the car since it was new.
Holy mackerel.
So it's actually a family car. My father bought it in December of 1966. I actually didn't get my license until 68, but 68, 69, going to school, in high school, this is the car that I drove in high school.
Wow, so many of us had a car that got away, and you were lucky enough to be able to hold on to it. So how'd you make that possible?
People have asked me this question a long time, or many times, how did I know? But going back to the early 70s, cars were starting to be made a little bit different than what you had seen in the middle 60s. The horsepower wars, the cars had a lot of metal, and by the early 70s, a lot of cars started to use a lot of plastics. I call them Tupperware interiors. It just didn't have the class and the character. This car had a lot of John DeLorean influence, a lot of European influence. And just going to the dealerships and looking at the new cars in the early 70s, they just didn't compare to what you could have bought 5, 6, 7 years earlier.
So you liked it, so you held on to it.
Yeah, being a family car and had driven the car in my high school days, I did buy a brand new car in 71, put the GTO away in 78. started a restoration in the early 80s, and then did a full frame-off restoration, finished in 2006, a 5-year restoration.
Wow, so this one's been done for 11 years
11
at this
years
point?
now, yes.
It looks like it's as fresh as it just happened today.
Reality is it's a museum piece. The last year, it was in the Pontiac Oakland Museum in Pontiac, Illinois, as a display car for the 50th anniversary of the 1967 GTO. And reality is, I don't drive it.
Yeah.
I restored it as a museum piece.
Yeah.
I have driven it just a little bit. I think I have like 2 miles on it since it was restored. But it runs and drives like a brand new car. Everything was restored in this car, everything.
But I'll tell you what, you're one of the few people that I'm going to let off the hook for not driving it, because you already drove this car into the ground and resurrected it, and now you want it the way it was new.
Yeah.
So you've already been there.
Yeah, it's my passion to restore the car. It was my passion on this one to restore it the best that it could be. I was very lucky to win the GTO Association of America Best of Show Award in Wichita in 2010, and in 2012 it won the POCI, which is the Pontiac Auto Club International Best of Show in Chicago.
Tremendous, very, very worthy of it. So let's get down to the details. What is it?
It's 1967 Pontiac GTO. It's got the standard 400 cubic inch engine, 335 horsepower, stock 323 rear end, automatic. They call it turbo hydromatic, 3-speed automatic. Options on the car: power steering, power brakes. It because of the Chicago winters, it has a rear defogger. Console is standard. A few other minor options I did add during the restoration. Added clock.
Cool.
I added floor mats. I added a power antenna and a hood tack, which was a factory item, but the dealers did install them. So ever since back in the day, I always wanted one of those. And when I did the restoration, I was able to find a good used one, and I put it on the car.
And the color is?
It's called Signet Gold. Okay, very, very, very popular color in the middle 60s. And the goal was to restore it to the best that I could. And my father bought it brand new. He passed away in 1970. So it was kind of putting something back that he gave me.
Sure.
So
great story, man.
Thank you.
Congratulations on a tremendous car.
Oh, you're very welcome.
We love to talk to people who've had lifetime experiences with the cars. And we tell people, if you got something cool, hold on to it however you can, because they're hard to get back, but you didn't have to go through that. Great work. I appreciate you bringing it to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals.
At Original Parts Group, we're proud to be the largest USA supplier of in-stock restoration, aftermarket, and performance parts for your GM A, B, C, E, and G body vehicle, including our newly released Cadillac, XLR, CTS, STS, ATS, Escalade, and EXT. Shipped directly from our 100,000 square foot warehouse and backed by our unbeatable low price guarantee. Order your free full color catalog today from OPGI.com.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen, at the 2018 MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals Live. I'm joined with Tom Marcucci here, looking at our program on his flip phone. He's the first guy to stream live video on a flip phone. And we're having fun. So we're kind of getting in the groove here. We're looking at a lot of cars, talking to a lot of people. Tom here is the man behind this L88 Corvette. But before we get to Tom, I want to introduce this gentleman because he is the original owner of this L88 Corvette. Sir, your name?
Richard J. Thomas. I go by Sam R.J.
Sam R.J. And Sam, tell me a little bit about your life at the time that you were able to buy an L88 427 Corvette. It's a Halo Corvette.
Yes, I wanted the car before I was drafted. I knew I was going to get drafted in '67, so I ordered it, waited and ordered it to have it when I got back from overseas.
And when he says back from overseas, we're talking about the Vietnam War.
Yeah, I was in Korea on the DMZ, but I lost a lot of friends in Vietnam, and yeah.
So you ordered this car in a way, were you looking at it as something to keep you excited about coming home after your service?
Yeah, it helped get me through being the Army experience. It wasn't a lot of fun back then, I'll tell you.
I can imagine. And
I went for my country, but you understand.
I always enjoy the privilege of talking with veterans like our friend here, because many of you people are very understated. And when he says, yeah, the Army experience wasn't that much fun, no. This is a different deal. Today we don't see the kind of warfare that you might have saw, and it was a different time period. And to order a car like this, and to your point earlier, a lot of your friends that you were serving with and your comrades who didn't come back, it's amazing to me and very fascinating that you were able to come back, and maybe knowing this car was waiting for you had a little bit to do with that.
Oh yeah, it helped a lot. I had it on my Kimsey stand. That's what you have in the barracks and stuff, and pictures and all, but I gave it away. Of course, if I'd known all this, I'd have kept it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, okay, now, so you're a young guy at the time. Again, an L88 Corvette convertible, that's not a cheap ride. I mean, how did this come to be?
Well, I wanted the motor, not the prestige of the car. I didn't want air conditioning, stuff like that. But
you order 15 options on it.
Well, yeah. I figured what the motor on cost. I got everything else that I knew of.
Well, okay, so that you could order, yeah. So as we're talking, we're going to get a look at this car in the background here. And so tell me, we'll talk to Tom now, who's the current owner of the car. Tom, tell me about the options lists that are on this car.
Well, I have to get the window sticker. There's so many. I have to get my glasses, too.
Sure. Well, a lot of people didn't think that you could get a lot of options on an L88 car. The L88, of course, is the the high horsepower 427.
The motor option was 1,032, but the other option we got the glass was tinted, the shoulder belts, the top, hard top, with the vinyl roof. He got the rear window defroster on this on a convertible.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Because it was an option. It wasn't much money. It's like $40, wasn't it?
Yeah. Positive traction, 456 gear. He wanted to race it, street race it. Power brakes with the J56. He also had an engine block heater.
It was cheap. And want to take care of the motor. Want it to be warm when you cranked it. Right?
Yeah, I don't think it got too cold in Georgia, but Forrest had the M22, the alarm, and the blue.
So, yeah, basically a full-on hot rod Corvette. And before you put that down, so the sticker price was $6,839.70. And there's this interesting irony here because, it's an over $6,000 Corvette with a few options because they were cheap.
Well, no, but the motor wasn't.
No, if you spend $1,000 on a motor, everything else is cheap.
Yeah, by comparison, yeah. All right, so this was bought that 456 gear and a 4-speed. You were looking to go win some money on street racing, I guess. What did you do with this car?
I never raced for money, but I raced a few times. But no, the night before, I almost got a turbo hydromatic automatic and black on black outside. But I changed. I couldn't make my mind up, but that's what I decided the next morning when I went to order it.
So you flipped the coin between a black automatic or the blue 4-speed convertible.
Yeah.
I think you made the right choice.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you and this car part ways?
I wanted to go back to college, and it wasn't me anymore. I mean, I lost my brother-in-law. I lost my best friend from high school, best friend from college. I just wanted to get away.
It was a beast to drive, he said, too. He couldn't,
Well, with the 456 in this thing, you're shifting all the time, and no choke, and the clutch was probably pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So, what did you graduate to when you got rid of this one?
Oh, I never went back to fast cars until recently. I got a quadra-steer Yukon is my fast car.
Fast to get in and out of parking spots. Right. So, Tom, how did you end up with this thing?
I was working with that Corvette Mike Vietro, trying to find it. It took me probably 5 years to find this car. So.
And today, this thing hasn't been driven that much since new either.
No. It's got 19,000 original miles. The paint's all original, the interior's original, the exhaust is original, the tires.
Unbelievable. And how did you guys connect, and what did you think when you saw this car again?
Got a hold of him somehow.
Somebody called me and asked that you wanted to get in touch. I was always surprised nobody did. I did talk to Errol McCoy, who owned Six Flags back in '77. He was the previous owner. And
Dr. Paul Noble owned it for a while too. He owned it for 20 years.
yeah. But, and it being at Indianapolis, I couldn't believe it. And I'd seen what these things were bringing, a little more than what I got. Yeah. And so it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as is this.
Well, listen, Corvettes, of course, are the middle name to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. And we really appreciate the fact that we're seeing these high-level halo Corvettes like the L88 4-speed convertibles, and then meeting the people who, in some cases, bought them new and now are caretakers. We really appreciate you for what you've done.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, thank you for your service. Thank you for buying a cool car, and thank you for buying it again.
Thanks.
Thank you for doing this.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our L88 Corvette. You guys are all right. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you. And at this point, okay, so we've been doing this for a little while this evening. I think it's time to touch base with our friend Zach Straits again. Zach, why don't you come on over for a sec and let us know what's happening out there in the social world.
Oh, people love this story.
Oh,
well, yeah, naturally, yeah, it's such a great story. Yeah, we're getting comments about, the coolest thing is people saying, hey, I'm getting a preview of what I get to see tomorrow. And some people said, it's like, I've made my decision, I'm coming tomorrow. So, again, we open, at 9?
Yep, 9 a.m. tomorrow.
9 a.m. tomorrow. So folks are seeing this and it's enticing them to come. So that's perfect.
That's really good news, because what we always found, and what part of the reason for doing this show, doing this after-hour show, is that you can walk around the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. I'm just going to point out a few things. So we've got some, the L88 car. We've got a whole line of Roadrunners, though, back there as part of our class of '68. We've got some more race cars over here, and we're going to see some gassers. And you can be a spectator and walk up and down and go, oh, that's cool. That's a wagon with stripes on it. Oh, that's neat. It's a Corvette. And unless you know the story,
right,
it's hard to understand and appreciate really what's going on here. And I've been talking with Bob Ashton and the other organizers of this event for years, saying we got to figure out a way to get these stories out. And during the day, there are so many people here. It's crowded. It's hard to walk around and get video and good pictures and stuff. But this event is nice enough to leave the lights on for us and let us hang out tonight, overnight.
Right,
and now, thanks to some of the gracious owners and people that brought these cars, they're willing to spend some time with us and share them. Well, now we get kind of a sneak peek and an inside look that's not rushed. It's quiet. It's a nice environment. And I really love the fact that people are saying, hey, well, maybe I want to come see it. Or if you were here today, maybe you want to come back and get a closer look at this car now that you know a little bit about it.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, this is awesome. I think it's a great preview. Folks are like, some of the comments that people say didn't know a car was made with those options. I mean, and these are, you can tell these folks know their car stuff, but they're saying, it's like a Duster with orange interior. It's like, people say, no, they never made, well, there it is. It's there.
Yeah, it's here, and so many of them are authentic. The team here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals goes through great lengths to make sure that if somebody says the car is a legitimate car, that it should be. They make them go through the documentation and the history and everything else. So these aren't just claims.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
All right, Zach, thanks for the social update. I appreciate you pounding the internet there and keeping an eye on that stuff for us. We've got a long way to go tonight with some more cool cars coming to you from the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. Right now, we're going to take a look at a video of a previous year. This is the 10th anniversary. We're going to look at a video that we shot of a previous car and check that out now. I'm Kevin Ostie here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals After Hours Live. Return to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals with folks. More After Hours Live coverage brought to you by the Mecum Auction Company soon. But first, let's take a look back at one of the highlights of the past 10 years of the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. There's a lot of cars here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals that are one of ones, meaning they're the only one made in a certain color with a certain engine combination or whatnot. And I'm here with Ken Funk, who's kind of a one of his own. Ken, what did you bring this year? What's this blue car?
71 Hemi Roadrunner. Always been a huge Roadrunner nut. And I remember back in the day in my neighborhood, the first 71 I ever saw, and they pulled up in this gunmetal gray car, and we were like, oh my god, oh wow, wow, wow. And he goes, oh yeah, watch this. He hits the air grabber switch, and that thing pops up. And we're just like, I was done. That was it. The rest of my life was planned out before me. And here we sit with the culmination of the whole, I mean, I've had a few Roadrunners in my day. This is my favorite car. Petty blue, or corporate blue, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Special order paint, and it's the only known street Hemi to be painted petty blue, and it's a 71 Hemi Roadrunner.
How cool is that?
Unbelievable.
Now, where did you find the car?
I had heard about it about 4 or 5 years ago, and the guy and I never really got together on a price, and it was a pretty weird phone call, and I said, oh well, and so much for that, you know. And then it popped up about 1.5 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, that guy still got that car, you know. And you talk and you call, and he seemed to be in a little better mood, and it just happened.
Awesome.
Yes. Amazing.
So tell me about some of the parts that are on this that made that Roadrunner package. There's a lot of cool styling tricks and elements in this car.
Well, the bird in the grill will get you every time. That's just it's great. It's insane. But actually, in '71 is when they really started putting the option list of '71. You just could check off a whole bunch of different stuff, and this thing is a gag. I mean, power windows, power steering, power brakes, of course, 6-way seat, front and rear wings. Bumper guards, cassette dictaphone. That's to make out, yeah, that's to make out your will when you're doing like 160 and a tire blows. You just turn it on real quick and you speak into it.
Will the remnants to somebody?
Yeah. Rim blow, strato vents. It's got the air conditioning ducts and everything, but there's no air because it's a Hemi. But you got this special venting coming in through the deck. It's my favorite car. That's all I can say. I'll own it forever. Yeah, the those bullet type exhausts started in '71. They're absolutely phenomenal. It was a great touch, and I've owned a few '71s. The Charger has the same tips, you know, only they're a little longer. I love '71s. I like them a lot.
All right, so tell me about the motor and trans in this car.
426 Hemi. I think it cost. Geez, that option was like $860, I think, in '71. Automatic. I'm a big 4-speed guy. I wish it was a 4-speed. I mean, if it was a 4-speed, I'd really own it forever. But no, it's an auto, which is fine. I drove it here 25 miles from Gurnee.
Nice.
All the way down and that was the longest I'd ever taken it on the road. So,
really?
Yeah. No, I'd only taken it around the block.
How's it drive?
Great. It was all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went okay. Temperature gauge was great, which is really important.
Yep.
Gas gauge works, which is
unheard of.
Really, really nice.
Yeah.
And just going around, you're just checking the gauges. You're looking in the mirror all the time because, you know, there's rotten plates on the thing, of course. So. And you made it.
Is this car all original? What's been done on this thing?
Not really sure. I know it's been repainted, and I know they redid the seats and stuff. It's been fluffed up here in the near to me. It's a nice number 3 driver.
Sure.
Right from the show, it goes back to LA, and I'm gonna take it apart a little bit. Nothing huge, but I'm gonna really, really, really make it nice.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad you brought it out because I was actually outside and I saw him driving this car, but I didn't know it was you. I just saw the car and I said, man, look at that thing. Air grabber scoops up. The same thing that happened to you happened to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm hooked forever on it, but it really got me at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought it out. And what are your thoughts of the MuscleCar and Corvette Nats in general?
I came to this for the first time 3 years ago. I guess it was 2 years ago, the first show.
Yeah.
And we were just like, how are they going to top that?
Yeah.
So we came last year, and it's like, oh my God, they did it. Well, they'll never top that.
Yeah.
And then you walk around and you're like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
It's the greatest show on the planet. Next year will be like the 45th anniversary of the 67 car, so that's what they're going to showcase. I have no 67 cars.
You have to get one.
I'm going out and buying a 67 car. So I can bring it to the show next year.
There you go. Now, if you're watching this on the internet or on television somewhere, all you have to do is buy a ticket. But if you're 10 from, you're buying a car. I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it up, buddy.
You betcha.
It's always good to see it.
Same here.
Yep. The V8 Speed and Resto Shop is a full-service restoration and performance center. We can turn your classic car, hot rod, or muscle car into the ride of your dreams. We do everything from repairs on old cars to building cutting-edge muscle cars that look original but have today's technology under the skin. You can learn more about our shop, v8speedshop.com, or give us a call today at 314-783-8325 to talk about building your dream car.
Grandma, can I play with this?
Sure thing.
Got it.
334. Sold $41,000 Frank's Way.
Happy birthday.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here at the 2018 MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals in Chicago. Our coverage presented by Mecum Auctions and by OPGI, and shared by our friends all over the world who dig muscle cars. We really appreciate that. And I do want to point out that we've been a little bit Mopar heavy and Dodge and Chrysler heavy in the first part of the show, and that's because of the geographic layout of the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. They oftentimes group cars together that are contextual. So don't worry, we just saw a Corvette. We are going to move on and see other makes and models, so don't think it's just one car. We like to say that this show is muscle car friendly no matter what. So we're getting to more cool stuff. Like our friend Stefano Bimbi, who is with Nicky Chevrolet or Nicky Chicago, and has brought out a tremendous row of gassers here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. Stefano, tell me about the link between Nicky and gassers.
Well, we'll start about 1966 when Dick Harrell decided to work for Nicky, and they built the ultimately famous Nova, built by Bill Thomas with the straight axle subframes, and raced the car under the Harrell-Nicky banner. And that was one of the original Chevy, funny cars back in the day. So that was not so much of a gasser, but it was an axle car, and it created and started that funny car genre, right, that was happening at that time. So the Nicky connection with Nicky Chevrolet starts there. They started offering axle kits in their catalogs over the counter, and of course their job was to pump out these big block motors to kids that were going to put them in old cars they could get out of a wrecking yard, shoe boxes, Tri-5 Chevys, some old, Corvettes that had been wrecked. And they started to axle up these cars, put big block motors in them, even small block crate motors. And so that was Nicky Chevrolet's connection to these types of cars.
It's funny because a lot of times we think of Nicky as being a muscle car thing, but Nicky was all about high performance. And back in those days, like you're saying, you grab something out of the junkyard, put a big motor in it, rip the front axle out so that it transfers and gets better traction, and go race.
Exactly. Weight transfer, lightweight, and big crate motors. I mean, crate motors aren't new today. They were selling them in the 60s.
And the other neat thing about Nicky is that it was one of the original high-performance parts dealers. Didn't just sell new cars, but did a really strong business in the Chicago area selling performance parts.
They actually had a national scope with Bill Thomas in Anaheim, California, and advertised in all the magazines of the day, like Hot Rod magazine, to sell performance parts. And so it morphed into this whole segment of racing, performance, muscle cars, and created that whole legendary Nicky status of the cars that you could get built by them.
It's really cool to me to look back at a lot of these dealerships that were high-performance dealers. Of course, we're going to say ENCORE Chevrolet being one of the most popular, Berger Chevrolet in Michigan, the Royal Oak Dodge guys. But Chicago was a performance center, not only with Nicky, but not too far down the street was Mr. Norm with the Mopar guys.
Yeah, that was some really neat competition between the Norms guys and the Nicky guys, both on the streets back in the day as well as at the track.
So we're going to fast forward to today, and we've got this, like I said, a very impressive row of different types of straight axle cars and the gasser style and blown big blocks and small blocks. These are here kind of sponsored by Nicky. Are these your customers? Do you guys, what do you do today with these cars?
Well, most of the cars here are customers' cars, and what I want to say is, a decade ago, 10 years ago, we rolled out the gasser kits that people could buy and purchase from us, Nicky, built by our gasser shop, John Timberg and Randy Schmidt, who operate out of Dwight, Illinois. And we were selling these kits to people so they could build their own cars. And that evolved into us building cars for customers. So here in this display today, you have cars that have been completely built by the Nicky Gasser shop from A to Z, cars that have our parts and kits on them that customers have built. And that's what this display is all about, is kind of showcasing what people can do and what was available back in the day. But the key to this display is, even though a lot of these cars are modern built cars that we built today, it's what you would have seen back in the 60s.
So a lot of authenticity and proper part selection to stay in that period correct era.
That's very correct. And not only is it just the part selection, even the way the frames are put together, there is no TIG welding. It's still all wire welding and stick welding, so it looks vintage. You look at one of these cars and it looks like it popped right out of 1965. Some of these cars do have original patina. A couple of the cars here were original race cars that we've since upgraded, but were race cars back in the day. But it looks like 1965.
It's super cool. And when you say they look like they might have popped out of 1965, I think some of these cars look like they might have popped right out of Cartoons magazine. I mean, it's awesome. They're big Hot Wheels cartoons characters.
Yeah, I remember that magazine. It'd be pretty neat, and a lot of the ideas probably came from there. But John was around, back in the era when these cars were prowling the streets and regulars at the racetrack. So he is very authentic in what he does. These things are very period correct.
Yeah, well, and how many did you guys have on display here right now?
We've got a baker's dozen, so a lot of different types of gassers for people to see, and it's our biggest assemblance of Nicky-built gassers and parts that we've ever had.
Awesome. Well, a couple things. Cartoons Magazine is back, by the way, so you can get a subscription today. You should probably carry it at the shop and get it out to the kids so that, they can keep building stuff like this. And the other thing is we just want to thank you for bringing out this incredible collection of awesome gassers. And although we've got perfectly correct, restored, and original muscle cars all over the place, this stuff is just fun. It's just fun to see. And again, thanks for bringing them out.
Thank you, and, thanks, everybody.
Our gasser display from Nicky Chevrolet, or Nicky Chicago, the proper name today. And right now we're going to take another little walk. We're going to go kind of around this display and look at another collection of cars. Let's take a look at the Olds Ramrods, right? So as we get there, get a closer look at this, I think it's a 59 Corvette with the magnesium scoop, up against a period correct Thunderbird with the multi-stack injection sticking out of the hood. Crazy stuff. We want to kind of make our way across to the other side of this aisle. So as the camera turns, and we're going to sneak between a couple of cars, it's kind of nice being here after hours because we have the ability to go between cars and, again, being very respectful and not hurting anything. But here we are in a long line of Oldsmobiles, and we mentioned before that there are all these invitational displays of different makes and models here at the Corvette Nats. This is a selection of what they're calling the Ramrods, which of course was a nickname for the Oldsmobile V8. And we have a whole selection here of Olds W31 cars. And we're looking at stuff from 1969. Here at the end of the road is our friend Ryan Weaver. And Ryan has one of the most interesting W31s on display here today. Ryan, good to see you.
Hey, Kevin. Great to see you.
You too, buddy. Now, Ryan has come all the way from the great white north of Canada.
We drove Wednesday, and there was no snow, so it was all good.
So it was just the great north?
Yeah, just the great north. Cheers.
Okay, now, Ryan, your car here has a great story behind it because this isn't its first appearance here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nats.
True. I bought the car in 2015, early in 2015, and then later in the year we brought it here for the Barn Finds and Hidden Gems display. So that was a awesome weekend, and I made my mind up right there when it was done. I wanted to get it back here, so that was kind of my goal.
Now, many cars that are on display here, like Ryan alluded to, started off being lost in a barn. They were dirty, they're messy, and we're going to see a few of those later. And through efforts of people like Ryan, a lot of them get restored and displayed here again as shiny new restorations. But in your case, this is kind of a hybrid restoration because you did the bottom side but kind of left some of the top alone. Tell me about the process.
It's called patina. It costs a lot less than restoration. So everything underneath the car, under the hood and the trunk is all restored, you know, as good as possible. But the outside of the car, I just had basically cut and polish and a little bit of touch-up work here and there, but we saved all the outside as much as possible.
Now, how extensive was your bottom side restoration? I mean, you had this thing off the frame, right?
Yeah, body off, every nut and bolt under the car, engine, transmission, suspension, steering, fuel, cooling. Ripped the rad out and put a radio delete in. That was about the only thing I changed on the car, but everything about the car was done over and restored.
Now, tell me what the W31 Oldsmobile package is.
Oh, sure. 68. They started, built 508 ramrods, so a 325 horse 350. Flat top pistons, 10.5 to 1 compression. Special carburetor, bigger harmonic balancer, special valve springs, valves, camshaft, and then the rest of it was all items you could get on a Cutlass as far as the drivetrain. But then there was a dual snorkel breather, and in 68 and 69 scoops under the bumpers, so that outside air intake system.
So a lot of ways it looks like a 442 as far as the performance parts, but it's still the 350.
Yeah, 350 cubic inch and only Cutlass S or F85. So the 442s were 400s in 68, 69, and then 70 they went to 455s. But yeah, these were all 350 and only Cutlass or F85.
And but at the time, Oldsmobile made a pretty stout 350. This is a high compression engine, and these things, they had some bite.
Yeah, and especially, well, all the years, but especially 68, a lot of them were drag cars, and there's a lot of documentation that they were made to put headers on and drag race. So 5 to 1 gears, M21 4 speeds, or M20 if you wanted, but lots of drag race time in them, and they're a lightweight car. Mine's a post car, so it's a little lighter than the hardtop, and in my opinion a lot better looking. So sorry hardtop guys, but it's all post for me.
Yeah, so he's a little partial. Now, while we're standing here, we're going to take our camera and kind of look up the row at some of the other Oldsmobile W31s. Yeah, you mentioned the hardtop. There's another post car. The post cars are the ones that have the window frame that stays up when you crank the window down. Of course, a hardtop, the window frame goes away. A lot of people like the hardtop version better. You're a guy who likes the post. What I find interesting about the post cars is a lot of people drag race those because that post added rigidity to the structure, and it made it twist a little bit less, which turned into better traction. But it wasn't just a post W31. You could get a hardtop, you could get a convertible.
Yeah, 69 they made 25 or 26 convertibles, but none in 68 or none in 70. There's one potential 68, but I have yet to see something on paper, which I'm hoping maybe happens tomorrow.
What's with this crazy yellow one with the brown stripes on it down there?
It's about as special as it gets, right? It's Sebring yellow, and then it's gold stripes, gold interior, gold vinyl top. Really, you could order what you wanted, and somebody did a great job when they ordered that one. I mean, it's spectacular looking.
There's a whole bunch of tremendous looking cars here. Now, I'm guessing that if you are involved with something as special as the Olds W31, that you get to know a lot of people that have similar type of cars.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time. I go to shows, I meet people, I go on V8 TV or the internet or Facebook or whatever, and then when I come to a show like this, I end up meeting all kinds of people that you kind of text or message or whatever. So yeah, I've had all kinds of great relationships that I've started through the old car hobby. And for example, with my old car, the family that I bought it from, they bought it brand new, and they came to the show, so they were here all day today, you know, looking at old cars. They brought their daughter, and, you know, it was a really special day. So we all went to a little party afterwards, and I raced back here to do this. But yeah, super fun, and lots of fun with family and friends for sure.
Very cool. I always tell people that this show is like a great big reunion because you get a lot of people that are here every year that have similar interests. Ryan, thank you so much for sharing. Congratulations on getting it done because you put the wing nut on the air cleaner like 12 hours ago.
Tuesday, I drove the car up my street and put it in the trailer, and Wednesday we drove here.
Yeah.
So that was the end of that.
Awesome. And I love the concept of restoring the bottom side, make it run right, make it handle right and everything. Maybe we'll save the paint for later because it still looks great.
There you go. Thanks very much. I appreciate the interview, and I really wanted to thank you guys, V8 TV and MCACN. I like what you guys do. I like that you get young people involved, and MCACN as well. And I love that you promote the hobby, and you guys really make things good for us. So we appreciate it.
Well, we do too. Thank you so much, buddy. Thank you. Cheers. Ryan Weaver, ladies and gentlemen, with his W31. And at this point, we're going to touch on another one of these awesome invitationals. This now is the 1969 Camaro COPO Invitational, but we've all heard of COPO cars. It stands for Central Office Production Order. These are very special 427 Camaros. But these are even more specialer because, as you notice, this COPO 427 has an RS headlight in the front, right? So these are RS COPO cars. And if memory serves, I think they made about 58 of these things, and we're going to check that in just a second. If you watch our Muscle Car of the Week show, you saw that we recently featured one of these. And today at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, our friend Tim Schell over here, come on, Tim. He's responsible for bringing this one out, but you're big into these cars.
Yes, I love the Rally Sport COPOs for sure, and I brought 4 of them here to the show. And like, I've always been into 69 Camaros from the time I was a little kid, but that's the thing, and I've always enjoyed speed. I love going fast, whether it was dirt bikes or snowmobiles or four-wheelers or whatever. I've always been into going fast. And so obviously the COPOs appeal to me like crazy because I love the 69 Camaros, and so the COPOs are just awesome. But I love to be unique. I don't like being like everybody else or whatever. I like having something that not everyone else can really ever get or whatever. And so like the rally sports just to me are the cream of the crop. They're the top of the line. Like a COPO is an absolutely amazing supercar, but a COPO with options to me is just the best. It's amazing. And so the rally sport cars definitely are my first love cars, 100%.
Very, very cool. So of these that you brought out, our camera now is going to take a spin and look at some of these. We got this blue one, there's a green one, a couple of vinyl top cars. Are those your 4?
Yes, yeah. These 2 here, the blue one and the green one, are mine, which are unique Canadian sold cars, both sold from the same dealership out of Toronto, Canada. So very unique, very cool. And then the black, triple black Rally Sport COPO, one of the most iconic 69 Camaros out there. And it's a very cool original drivetrain car and sold from Frost Chevrolet in Mechanicsburg, Ohio. And then the Azura Turquoise Rally Sport COPO is probably one of the most iconic Rally Sport COPOs, being its 15,000 original miles, Survivor, original paint car. It's the Malcolm Conner car. It's everyone in the 69 COPO world knows that car, knows of that car. It's absolutely amazing.
It is super amazing. And what I think is so cool, again, that COPO is a special package that you could get on the Camaro with an engine that wasn't listed in any literature anywhere, basically, with the 427. Tim, I really appreciate you bringing these out and sharing them with us today. We are going to talk to our friend Jim Lukens next. And Jim was around when these things were sold new. Have you met Jim?
Not personally, but we've seen each other very briefly. But nice to meet you, Jim.
Well, Jim, we've been talking before about some of the iconic dealers that sold these cars. And Jim, you used to be on staff at Berger Chevrolet in Michigan.
Yes, I ran their high performance department. Sorry for being so hoarse. Been talking all day today, but yes, I joined it in '68 when I was just struggling or growing, I should say, and then I was appointed manager in '70, and I stayed till '75.
So 68 to 1975, this is the time to be selling high-performance muscle cars. And Berger was a dealership that modified the cars and was able to order things special for people, and you've got a lot of stories about those.
Well, I do. In fact, this is my own personal RS COPO that I had. A GMAC came to me one day. They were there doing their annual monthly inspection to make sure all the cars that Berger said they were there. And they said, we got this car, we don't know what it is. Can you, and I said, well, tell me about it. And they described it. And I said, I'll buy it. And so we talked a little bit. We struck a deal, $1,500. It was repossessed by GMAC. It was a Berger car. It's in this picture here. It's an RS car. I didn't even know that the RSs were that special. I didn't even know, I had it for a couple of years. I had a chance to turn it for a whopping $1,900, and I had some fun with it, and I sold it after 2 years, but it was a real Berger Hugger Orange RS COPO Camaro, which you start nailing all those things down, that gets to be a pretty small family.
Yeah, and like you mentioned there before about 58 cars, and that's what I've heard too, and that's what I believe, that there were 58 of them built in total, and from what I've heard or do believe now that there's probably 28 to 30 of them, 28 of them that are still out there kicking, some of them in different stages of restoration, but yeah, there's a low number, but they're great cars. And
what do you think about that number?
I'm certainly, I tell all these owners, they know more about these cars than we ever did. In '68, '69, '70, it was just a job. These cars came, they went, and now, boy, every owner microscopically knows every detail of their car way more than what we ever did. We were just selling them back in the day. I will tell you one thing that's never been said, though. The Berger cars were pretty heavily optioned for a COPO. And the reason for that was Dale Berger Jr., who just passed away earlier this year. It was not that big of a margin increase from a 396, 375 to a 427. So Dale heavily, or more heavily optioned most of his cars, kept a few for race cars, but that way it differentiated more than just the $400 difference. So if you really wanted a 427, it was a $700 difference rather than a $400 difference because it had more options on it.
And because all Berger cars sold had that 9737 sports car conversion package, which added to the value of the COPO cars as well.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
So when it comes to the package, we talked about the Rally Sport package, the hidden headlights, the trim, the reverse lights underneath the taillights in the back. Of course, this car's got a painted bumper. The COPO package brought the 427, it brought the heavy-duty transmission, and then the sports car package also brought the performance suspension. When you guys are selling this stuff, what kind of people came in looking to buy all that? Because that was an expensive package.
Boy, I got to say, every age, from young to old, there really was no typical buyer. It took a certain type of buyer to afford it even back in that day. But there was a wide spectrum of customers, a wide spectrum of ages.
Well, I guess nobody would have thought, but you can tell me, back when you guys were selling these things new, did you know they were special? Did you think something better was coming next year and these would kind of go by the wayside? Or did you say, you know what, people need to hold on to these cars?
We were already getting rumbles about the low compression, and so we certainly knew these were special cars. And they're certainly my favorite even to this day.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so.
Something that I can definitely agree with 100%. They are my favorite to this day, and I believe they always will be.
Well, I love these cars. Thank you so much for bringing them out. And Jim, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you too, Jim.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Lukens and Tim Schnell and the RS COPO package invitational here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. Let's give them a big round of applause. Yeah, just awesome cars. Again, we're going to take a little walk and go this way, but this display behind me is something that you are not going to see at your local weekend car show unless it's, you know, a very high national event or it's the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. Interestingly, we're moving on from the COPOs to a whole display of Studebakers, of all things, because a lot of people don't understand the performance potential that Studebaker had. You know, a lot of these cars were very lightweight, low buck cars, so anybody could buy them, but many of them had V8 power, and many of them had supercharged V8 power, and not just the Avantis. So these are all kinds of different Studebakers, like Champions and some of the Hawks and some of the other ones. And our friends, again, at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals, they're friends of all cars. So it's not just Camaros and not just Mustangs and not just Corvettes. It's all kinds of different stuff. And we're talking about different stuff. Now we're talking really different. Our friend Gary Riley that we talked to earlier with the Hurst Olds prototype car is back again. And Gary, I'm going to trade places with you.
Okay.
Because now we've got something that is totally different. It's a V8 4-speed Gremlin.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about this car.
Well, a lot of fun. My customer wanted to have a Gremlin in his collection and just wanted to represent that. And I said, of course, we want to find a survivor because I don't think we want to, you know, go off and restore a Gremlin because the cost is the same if it's a, you know, a Boss Mustang or a Gremlin, really. So as luck would have it, we find this Wild Plum 72 V8 Gremlin. I'm like, wow, that's the perfect one. It looks just like the brochure car, but it needs restored. So we said, well, what the heck, let's do it. And as long as we're going to do it, let's really do it up nice. And that's how we got here with this, I think, pretty cool looking Gremlin.
Yeah, and the Gremlin was one of those cars where it was obviously an economy car when it came out. It was supposed to be basic transportation, but our friends at AMC just couldn't leave this stuff alone. So when you say this is a V8 Gremlin, what engine's in this?
It's a 304 and pretty little peppy engine. You know, it's just like all the rest of their engines. They just changed the sizes a little bit. So 304 with a 3-speed transmission, which is all you could get actually in a Gremlin, and it has a really cool traction bar rear end to handle the actual, you know, the extra power that this put down, and you could get good gear ratios and a positive traction. You get all kinds of cool options, disc brakes. It's, you know, it's kind of a mini little muscle car.
Yeah, the Gremlin X and this plum, you know, it's an awesome color. It's a crazy color, of course. You know, Chrysler had the plum crazy. This is kind of crazy plum. Inside, pretty basic.
Yeah, pretty basic. Kind of a neat little gauge cluster in there, but that's about it. You know, black, a lot of black plastic back in there, the little hatchback deal, and just some basic seats they put in just about everything at that time. So no console. It is very basic, but a lightweight car.
And the design with that kind of truncated rear panel is technically known as a camback, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Questionable styling for sure. I think it's pretty neat. My wife disagrees.
Well, and I might be wrong on this because I'm not the world's expert on anything, but it's my understanding that CAM, it's K-A-M-M, it's named after a German designer named Dr. Kam, who came up with this sliced-off thing to enhance aerodynamics, believe it or not, even though it looks like half the car got cut off.
Yeah, I guess that's just like a truck that's dirty on the back. When it's going down the highway, the air kind of pushes it because that big flat surface there. Yeah.
Well, Gary, again, what I love is your team spends a tremendous amount of detail time. Doesn't matter if it's a prototype Hurst Olds up in the front door or a Gremlin X in this crazy color of purple. I love it. Thank you so much for bringing it out.
You got it. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
The Going Gremlin, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, while we're here looking at AMC stuff, let's take a look at this one. And our friend Kevin Shope. Kevin.
Nice to meet you, Kevin.
Nice to meet you. We met a little bit earlier. We're not going to fool anybody, but I appreciate you playing along. So this particular car, and I don't want to necessarily stand and block the view. So let's go up around the front here a little bit. This one's kind of hard to miss because it looks like you know, a rolled up American flag going down the road. So this is a Rambler Scrambler, and tell me what the hot deal is with these cars.
Well, first off, let's get the name 100%.
Rambler SC.
It's a Hurst SC Rambler, and SC stood for supercar. And this car was kind of dreamed up by Hurst Performance in late 1968. They presented it to the AMC brass, and they bought into it. AMC was going headlong into all forms of racing, and they were looking for opportunities everywhere. And so this was an opportunity for them to take a design that Hurst handed over to them, make something and make a halo car for the dealerships to put in the showroom to really sell the AMX and Javelins that year. This was the last year for the Rambler.
Well, and they really went out with a bang. And what I find interesting is, again, doing a lot of video on cars with our Muscle Car of the Week show and V8TV, we get feedback and comments from people, undoubtedly, as they're commenting right now. And recently, we had featured one of these from the Brothers Collection, and we got some feedback. And what the guy said is, he said, yeah, but that paint job, it looks like a bunch of clowns should come out. and yeah, I mean, it's a backhanded insult. It's not favorable. But what I think people need to realize is that when this car was new, super stock drag racing was out of control, and your weekend drags had all kinds of great cars lettered up with flags and stripes and everything. And this is a car that you could buy already painted that way. You didn't have to paint it.
That's right. They were after the 18, 19, 20-year-old market with a car that they could basically buy off the showroom floor, put a couple Group 19 parts on it, and returning 13s in super stock, or to remain in F stock, pure stock in NHRA, which dropped it into basically a 10.01 rating on the horsepower to weight ratio and a 10.0 to 10.99 class. So it dropped it into the bottom of the class. It was killing Chevelles, 396s, and really gave an opportunity for AMC to shine with the little pocket racer. But for $29.98, you could go racing pretty fast. So.
Yeah, and a lot of people did, and you were racing to get this thing finished to come here to the Muscle Car and Corvette Nats.
Absolutely. I was moving around the shop pretty fast over the last couple of weeks, but we got it done with the help of a lot of great friends. We were glad to be able to present it here. It was one of the cars that they wanted to have here, and we worked very hard this summer to make it happen. So we're glad to be here.
One of the guys who helped you out is our commentator tonight, Mr. Zach Straits.
That's correct. Zach was here at our house last weekend helping us getting the interior put in this thing, and then arrived back on Wednesday to help finish up and load it up and get it out here. So very glad to have friends that are dedicated to the hobby and willing to help out as needed to finish up a 28-year project. So.
Wow, 28 years. You know, sometimes it takes time, especially when you're a guy in a garage.
That's right. You know, this was done in the home shop, so everything had to be done with either my own hands or with the help of those around that really knew what they were doing. So we were able to painted the car in the shop with a homemade paint booth, and basically worked from there. So it's been a labor of love, a lot of years of collecting parts and a lot of years of working on it.
Well, it looks dynamite. It's here in a great display of AMC products. They call the Nash Nuts over there, and I just want to say thank you for bringing it out. And I'm hoping you're having a great experience, and it was worth it to bring this to the Muscle Car and Corvette.
Absolutely, we have a lot of our friends here, so we're just glad to be here and be a part of the event. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Kevin and the Hurst SC Rambler. Correct my pronunciation, and congratulations again.
Thank you, Kevin.
We are going to take a short break here from After Hours Live, but I promise you, when we come back, you're going to see me get a little bit strange, because we're looking at a car that has been, a picture of which has been on my wall since I was 13 years old, and I saw it for the very first time in person here. A super special car here at Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals After Hours Live. We'll return to the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals with more After Hours Live coverage brought to you by the Mecum Auction Company soon. But first, let's take a look back at one of the highlights of the past 10 years of the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. When you come to the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, you'll see cars that are on display kind of individually, and then you'll see collective displays that are made up of cars of a particular make and model. And Rick, you're standing here in front of a ring, a corral, if you will, of Mustangs. What is this display all about?
This display is the 45th anniversary of the Boss 351, 1971 model. It was a one-year only car, 1806 made. I run the database on tracking these cars worldwide, along with my friend Al Thomas, and you know, we want to know as much about the history of these to preserve the history. Is one of the fastest Mustangs ever produced, so we're into tracking them and knowing where they're at, or saving what we can on them.
That's pretty interesting because the Boss 351 is probably the only year that the small block car was faster than the big block.
That's true, and it had high compression, 11 to 7.1 compression for a small block.
Crazy.
Only came with a 4-speed. You can get it with power steering or no power steering. So
interesting. An 11.7 to 1 compression in a year when compression ratios were really
down.
taking a dive. Yeah. So these cars, I remember reading road test stuff. We're talking like mid 13-second cars,
yes.
right?
Yes. Yep.
And they're not small.
Oh no, not small. I mean 3,400 pound, but they also don't have the smog equipment on them like the Boss 302 or the Boss 429. So it's free breathing.
Very interesting. And you said what, there was 1,800 and some made?
1,806.
1,806.
I've got about 30% accounted for. Now some of those do include, we got confirmed Boss 351s destroyed.
Okay, so some cars that were and cars that are.
Probably about 20 or 30 we got confirmed destroyed, but we do have those VINs.
So now, in addition to the Boss 351 engine, what else made this car unique as far as suspension and anything else?
It's got the traction lock rear end, which is 391 rear gears. It's the nodular center section. Aluminum intake, factory forward. A unique 4300D carburetor, 4-barrel, 750 CFM. You got the aluminum valve covers, solid lifter, 4-bolt main, a big harmonic balancer, heavy-duty clutch, heavy-duty competition suspension, the springs, leaf springs and coil springs, sway bar front and rear, ram air, no automatics.
Really?
Strictly 4-speed, strictly wide ratio.
Very cool. Yeah, these it's a hot recipe, and it's interesting that this body style is kind of the stepchild of enthusiast Mustangs.
Stepchild of the first generation Mustang.
Yeah.
But it's coming around, and I've been trying to promote these cars for years.
Well, I always thought this body style was cool. I dig the kind of the jet fighter styling, if you will.
Yeah.
It reminds me of you know, kind of the SR-71 Blackbird, aggressive styling, the black honeycomb stuff that some of them have, the stripe.
Yeah.
I love the way the bumper fits around the front and that almost flat rear window.
Yeah.
You know, the car looks supersonic standing still.
It does. It does. Yeah.
So tell me about how this display came together. Where'd you find these other cars?
You know, all these guys here are personal friends. We got Boss 351s. We talk over the phone or email or Facebook, and the guy says, hey, I'm doing this for the MuscleCar Corvette Nationals. I need this color. They came in 11 colors. I've got 8 of them in the stock, 11 colors, and 1 special paint.
Which one is the special paint car?
The Calypso Coral. Kind of an odd orange.
Yeah, it is. Well, listen, we appreciate you putting the time and effort into making this display, and we'll check out the book, and it's great you're spreading the word to get these cars a little more love, because they're cool cars.
Yes.
Thanks, Rick.
Hey, thank you.
Yep.
At Original Parts Group, we're proud to be the largest USA supplier of in-stock restoration, aftermarket, and performance parts for your GM A, B, C, E, and G body vehicle, including our newly released Cadillac, XLR, CTS, STS, ATS, Escalade, and EXT. Shipped directly from our 100,000 square foot warehouse and backed by our unbeatable low price guarantee. Order your free full color catalog today from OPGI.com.
All right, friends, Kevin Ostie here at the 2018 MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals in our After Hours live coverage. And what's happening here is that the show actually happened earlier today, but our friends at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals have allowed us to stay after hours and share more of the stories of some awesome cars. And we'd like to thank a lot of the people that brought these cars out that are staying here late in order to share these stories with you, no matter where you are in the world, and we are monitoring the comments, and we're hearing from people in all corners of the globe who love muscle cars. Thank you so much for watching. Now, I do have to say, this is live, and this is the first time we've covered this event in a live fashion using this technology. And last interview, we had a little fuzzing going on, some static with one of the microphones. We're apologizing for that. It's just because we're trying to cover a lot of ground here. So, having said all that, welcome back. And now we have a car that is, for me, a borderline religious experience to be standing next to this thing, really. And the owner, Mr. Brad Conley, is here. Brad?
Hey, Kevin.
This car not only is interesting to look at first glance, but I learned about this thing in the early 80s, and I remember seeing a magazine story that posted a couple pictures of it, and it blew my mind at that point. Because of the design, the colors that we're going to see, and I cut that picture out and I stuck it on my bedroom wall, and it stayed there, almost until I got married.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
And now it's in my garage.
Okay, that's even better.
So this car is one of the reasons why I'm such a Buick fan, and to see it in person for the first time yesterday, for me, I got a little teary-eyed, and it sounds crazy, but it happened. So Brad, tell us, what is it?
It's a 1970 Buick GSX. People call it a prototype. It's really a factory show car.
And when we talk about a factory show car, we're talking about a car that was built by Buick, but to get the crowds excited at some of the big auto shows.
Up on a turntable at the car shows, it would have a model talking about it. It has various design changes from a production car. They took an early production Buick GS Stage 1 and tricked it up visually.
So starting in the front, we've got the under chin spoiler, as we call it, that is definitely unique and only found on this very car.
Right. This is a one-off production, not even production, it's a one-off handmade spoiler. Yes, yeah. It actually is. You have to be very careful on curbs and loading it into a trailer. I had to custom make a trailer ramp to fit the thing in because it's so low.
Yeah, I bet earlier today we saw a few snowflakes falling outside, and I bet you were getting nervous because you don't want to go plowing down the street with this thing.
I would plow the street, yes.
So you've got your custom lower spoiler, then we move up to the hood, and the hood has a unique set of scoops on it.
Yes, the hood is actually a fiberglass over steel bracing underneath. And the scoops are much taller, wider, and longer than a production GS.
So I'm also noticing that the color, we have a kind of a pearl white. It's not a regular Apollo white that you could have got on the GSX back in 70. And the pinstriping around the black is a little different.
This is true, and the shape of the stripes are different than a production. They're narrower and don't go all the way to the leading edge. It's a base coat of white, silver pearl, gold pearl, and then the orange and red stripes against the black.
Now, when we dip down and we look at the wheels, Buick is famous for their style of what they call the road wheel, which was a chrome wheel, but normally we'd see the ribs being in chrome also, and the whole face on this is black.
That's the way they did it for this show car. Yes, it's black.
And then we also have our characteristic GSX badge, but it's on the fender instead of being on the rear quarter panel, so that got moved. And as we make our way to the rear of the car, one of the other amazing thing is the three-piece rear spoiler.
Yes, it's a three-piece with the ends molded into the quarter panel extensions, and the center section lifts with the deck lid, and the center or the quarter extensions stay in place. They don't move.
Almost like the what we call the salami slicer on a '69 Firebird.
Yes, exactly.
And I think this is taller than the production version as well?
It's a little bit narrower, it's taller, it's a little bit further forward. It's just different.
It is very different, but I love it. I love the way they molded it into the quarter extensions. And so now we got kind of the overview of the main points, except the rear exhaust is also different on this car through the bumper below it.
Right. Oldsmobile guys are like this. They're 442 exhaust tips. Yes, I have 442 exhaust tips on my Buick, and they sound great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and they were chosen by GM.
Yes, yes.
All right, so outside, we've got this great-looking car. To me, one of the other high points is the interior on this car. And, you know, at first glance, you look in there, and it's like a discotheque from 1969. The colors, the high back buckets. Tell me what's going on.
It's very 70-ish. There's a lot of leather in that interior. It's all leather. There's some stuff that was used, like the door panels that were off of a Riviera. The engine turn materials on the dash, the switches, the large GSX badge on the dash instead of a smaller one that's in plastic, that's brushed stainless, padded steering wheel, just a lot of little tiny things. And the car even has some wood in it that they nailed leather to and pushed into the along the sides of the seats in the rear. It's pretty interesting.
Well, and it looks super comfortable.
It may look that way. I will say the ladies love the colors. There was, I believe, a lady designer that did this car as her work for Buick is designed by a nice lady and quite interesting.
It does have that, you know, kind of go-go dress, miniskirt type look
right.
to the colors.
Yeah, and even things, if your guy could go back and get the door panel emblems that say GSX, they're actually held in by little tiny dentist drill screws.
Wow. So it's got a hand-built kind of feel along with all of the custom touches.
Right, exactly. Yeah, pretty cool car.
And at the same time, it's a Buick, so it's a 455. Is it a stage 1 car?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
With the Turbo 400 and what rear gear?
364. Non-air car 364.
Yeah, so the 364 allowed the engine to spin a little bit higher RPM, which they didn't really want on the air conditioning cars.
Exactly.
So how does a guy end up with this car? You've had it for a long time.
I bought the car in May of 1978. I didn't pay a whole lot for it. I bought it from a friend, who's still a friend, believe it or not. So.
But then I think you ended up putting a couple dollars into this car.
Yeah, it's been frame off restored. There's been a few dollars spent, yes, and a lot of research in getting the car done and done properly.
Well, it really looks like it was done properly because the fit and finish is beautiful, the surface is beautiful, the interior is incredible with the detail level that was done.
It's a pretty neat car. I'm really having a great time here, and this is a fantastic show everybody should come to.
Well, that's a great little plug. I was going to say that this car doesn't really get out very often into public events like this, so we're all very fortunate and honored that you brought it out.
Well, I thank you, and no, it doesn't get out very often. That's I could only do this car one time. I'm not a wealthy man, and the cost of redoing a car is very cost prohibitive for most people, I believe.
Yeah. Well, it's over the top, and it's here in a Buick GSX display that we're going to do a little walk by in a second. But here's the thing. You're a guy like Brad Connolly who ends up with a one-of-one, factory built, like you said, some call prototype, but factory show car. How do you follow that up? Well, maybe you end up with another one-of-one Buick GSX, like the black one right behind it.
I've been very fortunate, and I've been at the right place at the right time with the right amount of money.
Yeah. And then you follow that up with you've got one of the Grand Nationals and a very special one.
It's a GNX prototype.
The GNX prototype, so you've got the 70X prototype, the 71 black car.
The only black GSX they produced, yes.
And the Grand National, the GNX car, well, maybe you can bring that one back when you come back next time.
Okay, we'll do that. That's a deal.
Awesome. Well, Brad, like I said, this one gave me the shakes because this car really kind of got me hooked on muscle cars, and to see it in person was a super special thing, and we are all very fortunate that you brought it out.
Thank you, Kevin.
I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I even brought this one, I want to reach in here because true to my word, I made this my little celebrity pick this year. When I say little celebrity, I'm talking about me. I'm not very much of a celebrity.
No, you're not.
But that's the least I can do is give you a piece of paper.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brad Connolly and the GSX factory show car from 1970.
Thanks, Kevin.
Amazing cars here. I told you we'd get to some makes and models that were not all Mopar. We're going to take a little bit of a walk and go down that side. Now, all these Buick GSXs in this display are part of the GM A-Body platform, and we'd like to thank our friends at OPGI for helping us sponsor the show tonight, because OPGI makes reproduction parts for A-Bodies like this GSXs. This display of the Buick GSX is unique because a lot of people think the GSX only came in Saturn Yellow or Apollo White, but in 1971, as we saw with Connolly's other car, you could get them in black, and by 1972, you could get them in a whole bunch of different colors. And that's what's here. A GSX of, I believe, every color but one that was ever manufactured in line here, all on display at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. And at this point, we're going to walk and talk and go this way just a little bit. And we've been touching on the GM A-Body concept. We have another one coming up, the next car we're going to look at. And you notice this car show is obviously about the cars, but it's also very much about the people. Because if you're into building cars and restoring them, you don't do this by yourself. You know, you might have family members, you might have friends, you might have a shop that you work with. The more you get involved, the more different people you meet. And I've been fortunate to meet a lot of very cool people in this industry and hobby over the years. And one individual in particular is a friend named Frank Zimkowski. And Frank is here.
Great to see you, Kevin.
Great to see you, my friend. Frank and I met because our friend Mike Clark and I do a podcast called V8 Radio, and tonight Mike is the guy switching all the cameras and doing the tech directing. Otherwise he'd be standing right here. And in our V8 Radio podcast, we do some automotive trivia and talk about muscle cars and whatnot. And our friend Frank here is always the guy who aces every trivia question. I mean, this guy knows his stuff when it comes to factory muscle cars. And got to meet him on Facebook. Or two later, and we're meeting in person for the first time yesterday here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. So, Frank, thanks for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
This Judge is an amazing car.
Thank you very much. It's our pride and joy. It's our family love affair with cars. We go, car shows. We take it everywhere. We're from Jersey, so we drove it. Had it tripped out. 800 miles just for the show, and we're so excited to be here.
I love it. Super passionate about the car, and your son's here with his Buick Grand National, and your wife's here. It's truly a family event. The thing that stops people in their tracks is
Warwick Blue, and GM really didn't keep numbers of how many were made, but they suspect around 100, and there's 11 were found in the world right now. There's 11 known Warwick Blues.
11. So tell me, what is it? Year, and the engine options and the whole thing on this?
It's a 69 Ram Air 3, 4-speed, 355 rear, power steering, no power brakes, no console, intact engages, AM radio, and a limited slip rear. That's about it.
Interesting lineup. Now the GTO Judge kind of evolved a little bit, because initially the Judge was supposed to be kind of the base model GTO.
Yeah, the economy car is supposed to compete with the Roadrunner, and it started out with it that way, and it ended up being a high-end car, more expensive car than a regular GTO.
And was that because people like whoever ordered yours started just kind of piling options on and making them more deluxe as the option list went on? Or did Pontiac start adding more things on their own?
I think Pontiac, they changed the direction of where it was going to go. It was going to be an economy car, like I said, like a base Roadrunner type of car. And they decided that, hey, instead of doing that, let's make some more money at it and make it a high-end car, higher than your average GTO owner.
Yeah, it's interesting. You wouldn't expect a car manufacturer to say, I wonder how we could make this cheaper. That doesn't happen. They figure we need to figure out a way to juice this thing up. Yeah. So it's a Ram Air 3, and again, this is a 4-speed car?
4-speed car, M20. It's totally numbers matching, from engine, trans, rear, water pump, distributor, carb, everything. And it runs fantastic.
And a beautiful blue interior. A lot of times blue cars on the outside with a blue interior, they kind of clash, but this one just goes together so well.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, people look at it and go, they just can't believe the whole blue. And then most of them were black interior, I believe, with the Warwick, but some were the white, off-white, and some were the blue.
So like I said before, the other thing that's mind-bending is how clean this is and how clean your son's Grand National is as well. Now, not for your day job, but the two of you guys have kind of a little side fun business that you call Two Franks Detailing. You guys know how to polish a car.
Thank you. Yeah, it started as like just a fun thing, and the whole family does it, and it's our little side business. And it just took off, and we're so busy now. We're still doing cars now in the winter.
It's too bad you live in Jersey, otherwise I'd send you stuff. You know, as we finish restorations in our shop, we'd go right to your place if you were closer. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And that doesn't mean I'm not happy with our detailer. We got a great guy, but you do a great job.
Thank you.
Got to cover myself. It's live TV. So Frank, thanks again, and we appreciate you making the trek all the way out from Jersey. It was kind of fun. There were some videos online where you were showing this car getting backed out of the Reliable transport truck. Yeah. And I got to say, our friends at Reliable, many of these drivers didn't sign up to be internet video stars.
Yes.
But when you see cars like these here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nats, can you imagine the stress level of backing this thing off a second-level trailer, especially when the owner's standing there with his wife and his kid, all with cameras shooting video?
It sure was. We had this thing, the live video thing my wife was doing like every 5 minutes, and just it's just overwhelming. The show is just absolutely overwhelming. It really is.
Yeah. So we got to make sure we take care of the Reliable driver on the way home.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we had the same guy going home.
Yeah, good. All right, well, Frank, again, thank you so much for coming out. A great addition to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. And at this point, we've made it kind of to almost the far end of the show. There are lots and lots of cars here still on display. And you came from Jersey. We're going to talk to another gentleman who came from the Great White North, kind of far away. Let's take another little walk and talk and look at something truly special. Not like all these cars aren't truly special. But we've been touching on a lot of cars tonight that are super limited editions and special editions and one-of-ones and things that were dealer packages and different kind of stuff. And right now I am joined by our friend Cliff Gunnand. Gunnand, I know. He made me practice it and I still got it wrong.
You aren't French enough.
I am not French at all. So.
There you go.
Cliff, so this, at first glance, is almost a B5 blue Dart is kind of what it looks like from far away, but tell me what it is.
Well, it's a 1972 Dodge Dart Swinger 340 Special. Now you might ask, well, what's so special about another Swinger 340? Well, they stopped making the 340 Swinger in 1970, but a dealership in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada said, we still need a few. And at that time, Crosstown Motor City up in Edmonton, Alberta, actually had a lot of clout. They were one of the kind of the Mr. Norm of the North, and they were the highest volume dealership in Canada at the time. They sold the most Hemis per capita in Canada, and they had the clout to say, we still want some more of those little swingers. And this is an example of 45 built for them, nobody else in the world. And here there's 13 known to survive, and this is one of them.
Incredible. And especially at a time period when, you know, we're kind of used to these one-off dealer things from the mid-'60s and late 60s. But by the early 70s, man, high performance was going out the window, gasoline changed, the lead came out, the compression ratio dropped, emissions started to happen. So that dealer had a lot of clout to be able to put together a high-performance version in that climate.
That's right. And what made this the special, as it's posted on the side, is that it was the LL, the base priced Swinger, and they just put all the go fast goodies, because in here there's vinyl floors, 3-speed manual transmission, radio delete. They were just ordering more race cars for their clientele because they sold like hotcakes up there in 1970. So
because they could.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this one, it's super clean. It is great to look at. What's the story on the condition? Is this? It's obviously been, loved if not fully restored.
Yes, it was rotisserie done by my buddy Kevin Kaiser, and the boys back up in around central Alberta, from Corey Alexander to you name it, yeah. But they helped put this little girl together, and it was finished about 8 months ago. I put it in the World of Wheels up there in Calgary, and it just went crazy. Social media works because Bob says, I need that car down here.
Yeah, well, Bob and I talked about that car, and there's another gentleman over here, our friend Ron Bobian, he works for Diamond Pistons, and he loves these cars, and he knows all about these things, and he kept telling me, he's like, man, you got to get this guy down here. We got to get these cars on display because it's going to bend people's minds when they see what was available in Canada and not in the States.
Yeah, I love Ron. I mean, he's great energy. And he almost knew about these cars before I did, because people knew about the '71 swingers built again ordered by Crosstown Motors, but nobody knew about the '72s till early 2000s.
And was the '72 the end of the line?
It was. Yeah. And then there was no more. I mean, yes, it still is the low compression 8.5 piston, but it still has the big thermal quad, and they say it still made 285 horsepower net. I mean, gross. Yeah. And interesting little Canadian story in the muscle car world.
Yeah, and you came a long way.
Oh, we did. We took ourselves three days, and I'm going to say it took us 2,600 kilometers, which is about 1,650 miles.
One way.
One way.
Yeah. Was this your first time here at the show?
Totally, first time, just blown away. I mean, now nothing's going to compare, because especially up back in our home up there in the north. I mean, we just don't have the population base, right? And but we had some pretty unique cars.
Well, I'll tell you what, all of our Canadian friends with the unique cars, you're all invited. Please come and attend this show, and if you got something really cool, talk to Bob and the team, and maybe you can have it invited officially to be on display like this one. Another example of the Muscle Car and Corvette Internationals.
Yeah, good one.
Cliff, thank you so much for bringing it out. Awesome car. Let's hear it for the Swinger Special from 2,500 kilometers away. I'm learning the metric system. I'll get there. I'm Kevin Ostie, and we are live here in Chicago at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. And at this point, we have plenty more cars to check out. We've got a great display coming up of cars that belong to long-time or original owners. Have had them for a long time. But first, we're going to break away and check out another video of some stuff from a previous show. We invite you to come back in just a few minutes, check out the video, and we'll be back live at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals after hours. We'll return to the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals with more after-hours live coverage brought to you by the Mecum Auction Company soon. But first, let's take a look back at one of the highlights of the past 10 years of the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. We've got a special treat for you this year at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. The starting third baseman for the Chicago Cubs and A-body restorer extraordinaire, Mr. Dan Vasick. Dan, good to see you.
Hey, Kev, how are you? Good to see you again. Appreciate it.
This is nice because this helps you match your shirt and your hat and everything.
Exactly. I got to represent the Cubs. I've been a loyal Cub fan since I was a little boy, so I just thought it'd be a good tribute to be here and represent.
It's time.
It's time.
Yes.
It's time.
Well, speaking of winning performances, here we are at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals again.
Yes.
And today, we've got you in the Day 2 display.
Yes.
Tell me, what does the Day 2 concept mean?
Day 2 is a pretty fascinating concept. When you bought your car in 1969, 1970, whatever year it was, the concept was you took it home, you showed it off to family and friends. Next day was Day 2, and that's when you started taking off the parts that weren't so cool, that were GM select parts. For example, the shifter, they weren't the best shifter maybe, so you wanted to put a different shifter in the car that performed better to the car. Mm-hmm. You wanted to put different tires and wheels and personalize the car to your own liking. Mm-hmm. So the concept became Day 2. Mm-hmm. And the second day of you owning the car, you took off the bad parts and put on some really cool aftermarket goodies that were available in that era.
One thing I think is interesting is when we see a lot of restored cars that have like a a steel wheel or something that's not very flashy. Some of those cars were purchased new with the cheaper wheels, with the customer knowing that they were gone the next day, and they were going to put a shiny set of Kragers on or something, so they didn't spend the extra money to buy the fancy wheels from the factory.
Exactly. Those customers that bought those cars were very, I would say, frugal.
Savvy,
yeah. Because you know, they knew exactly what they wanted, and what some of the things that GM offered wasn't exactly on their punch list.
Sure. Well, so what's the difference between a day two car and a car that just has a bunch of aftermarket parts on it?
Well, day two is period correct also.
Okay.
So you can't just go and buy a Krager that's produced today if you want to make it authentic and correct.
Gotcha.
You want to buy that Krager wheel that was produced when that car was built or very shortly after, and that would make it very vintage. So some of these cars here were judged, and the judges were looking for factory correctness, such as that.
And time period correctness.
And time period correctness. You didn't want to have a tachometer that read 1997.
Gotcha.
You wanted a vintage tachometer that read whatever 1960 vintage tachometer it was.
So is there a kind of a cutoff time period of when the parts aren't quite as authentic? You know, for example, we're standing in front of, this is a 66 GTO, 67?
66, yep.
66 GTO. So what's the latest on this particular car, you know, that would be still considered authentic day two?
Yeah, I would say maybe like a 4-year period, something like that is what I would say. And that's just my opinion. But you want it close. Anything after 5 years is like, it's cool, but I like to have a little closer date.
Right, and it becomes obvious that it's not a, like you're saying before, a 2010 electronic device or something.
Yeah, and it's a whole period. It was a whole lifestyle. It was just, you know, the things that were cool to that culture, and the colors, and the bling, and all the things that made the 60s and early 70s just kind of cool and special to the guys that have, and gals that have cars like this, like these cars.
Very cool. Now, we've got a variety of different cars in this day two display.
Yes, we do. We've assembled 23 cars that took over a year to assemble. That's a lot of pecking and talking and texting and getting all these cars here. But yeah, there's everything from a V8 a Vega. That's a Yenko Vega that's got some cool day two parts on it, to anything as a psychedelic paint job as these two cars you see here. And then we've got some Baldwin Motion cars. We've got some cool Camaros. We got some COPO Camaros. So it was all about being brash, loud, and an image that we had.
Now, would you consider a Yenko car to be a day two car?
Absolutely. If you wanted to take that Yenko and put some day two parts on it, 100%, because we have living examples of them here today.
But that one might even be kind of a gray area, because a Yenko really wasn't a assembly line produced car to begin with.
Correct. I think it's your own stamp of approval. Whatever you as that owner wanted to do to that car, if you wanted to take those beautiful, you know, Yenko wheels off and put Kragers on it, they did them.
Yep.
People did them. You know?
Very cool.
And that's what we like.
Well, listen, man, we appreciate you taking the time to assemble this thing and show it off. And it's another a slightly different angle that keeps the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals fresh, but still with that nod to authentic and correct.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yep, right on. The V8 Speed and Resto Shop is a full-service restoration and performance center. We can turn your classic car, hot rod, or muscle car into the ride of your dreams. We do everything from repairs on old cars to building cutting-edge muscle cars that look original but have today's technology under the skin. You can learn more about our shop, v8speedshop.com, or give us a call today at 314-783-8325 to talk about building your dream car. Welcome back to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals 2018 After Hours Live Show. I'm Kevin Ostia. We've moved into another part of the building here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. There's cars everywhere here. I think the grand total was 565 or so cars on display here this weekend at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois. The show is open again tomorrow. If you do want to come by and see these things in person, we welcome you to do that. Or if you were here earlier today and you want to see these that we've talked about, maybe get a closer look, come on back. In the meantime, this display is one of long-term and original owners, right? People that have had their muscle cars for a long, long time. And I'm standing with Mr. Dennis Sherman, sorry, Dennis. And Dennis, you've got an outstanding 65 Impala.
Thank you. It's original and a long-term owner both. So.
This one is not just your run-of-the-mill large 65 Impala, because this has an engine combination that is really, really special.
It's an L88, 396, 425 horse, limited number. They only made the engine for 5 months. Most of them they made went into Corvettes, and then some found their way into the Impalas and Bel Biscaynes.
Do you have any idea how many made them into the bigger cars?
There's a lot of confusion on the numbers because GM, I guess, lost some of the records, but we had a guy here today with some of his records. He said probably 1,000 of them, a little over 1,000, made it into the Impalas.
Yeah. So when you're looking at an L78 Impala, it's not just the, well, it's interesting the 396 was rated at 425 horsepower, right? So that's a pretty high horsepower number for that 396.
That was a rating. If you listen to the car books, I read the books back then, the publication said it's really closer to 5 in the high fours, as were the other manufacturers as well.
Yeah. So what's the transmission and the rear end in this car?
The transmission is an M21 close ratio 4-speed, and the rear end turned out to be 331, but that's not what I ordered.
So you ordered this car new?
I ordered it new at the end of the model year. We had 4 dealers in our city of Fort Wayne that had Chevy dealerships, and 3 of them already had their orders closed. So one was still ordering. We placed our order in July, and they called me the next week and said, well, you may not get your car. I like to have a heart attack. We might not go get my car. They shut off their orders in midstream, and they didn't know if the order would go through or not. But it did. It just didn't come through with everything I originally had ordered. I had ordered 411 gears, and they said, sorry, all the 411s we had are slated to go into the 66s, so you get what we had extra of, and that was a 331.
Very interesting, and especially interesting that they actually told you this.
Well, I pushed them pretty hard as to why did I get the wrong one, and the car actually sat on the lot after it came into the dealership for 3 to 4 weeks. As I tried to get them to change it out, I agreed to pay the labor. Nope, they weren't going to change it, so it was either take the car or they was going to sell it to somebody else, so I took it. It was probably actually a godsend in the highlight, because with the 331, I didn't blow the motor like a lot of the guys did. That's where a lot of them went, is into the junkyard. The RPMs are down. It's a nice highway cruiser. I get better mile to gallon. It saved the engine.
I was just going to say that. You probably didn't mind that 331 after all, because this is kind of by design a big highway cruiser. It's big, it's comfortable, you've put a lot of people in it. How did you use this car?
Well, the original intent was to go street racing. I was 18 years old, and all of our friends had like 409s, and this is going to be the one to come after that. And I reading all the car books, and I said, hey, this is the engine I want when it comes out. So it come out, I ordered one, and when I didn't get the gears I wanted, street racing just went out of the picture real fast. So it was a daily driver for a year. I got married, and we drove my wife's car, and it kind of become a Sunday car, a cruiser, a nice highway car, like you said. You run down the road at 70, 75 mile an hour, you're just barely over $3,000, and that's just where the engine comes into its power curve. It really starts running better.
Well, I love the color combo. The interior looks like it's brand new.
Well, we took good care of it. It only has 29,000 miles on it, and it spends all but the first year in a garage, and a lot of times even under a cover in the garage, so it doesn't see that dangerous sun that's killing the paint, killing the interior. There's nothing been touched in the interior other than cleaning it and a few light bulbs, and the exterior is the same way. It has never had a body shop work #1 done on it. It's all factory.
It's incredible, especially being that original. It blows my mind. I love the fact that you ordered it, that you know this car inside and out, that you never did wreck the thing and you didn't get hurt and all the rest of it, and it still looks this great today. How far did you come to bring this car to our show this week?
Well, it's about a 4-hour drive for us through snow, sleet, rain, freezing rain. It was a great weekend.
It's worth it?
Oh, yeah, it's real worth it. You said I haven't wrecked it. My wife thought I did wreck it once bad, because in February of '67 in the snow and ice, a '66 Plymouth Belvedere slid in the back end of me. And I come home and told the wife I had a wreck with the car, and she about killed me. But it had a little dent in the bumper the size of your thumb and a little scuff on the paint you could touch up with a brush bottle. But I said, that's it. The car is never going out in the winter again. That's the last snow it saw.
So disaster averts disaster, huh?
Yes, exactly.
All right, well, listen, Dennis, thank you so much for bringing it out.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear for Dennis and his all-original 425 horse 65. Great, great car. We're going to stay in this little section, but we're going to kind of take a walk around and look at a couple more of these cars that are long-term owners here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. And, you know, when you hear these stories, a lot of times it really brings home how different today's car market is. Today, you can't order individual options. You order an option package, right? You can't necessarily pick the specific gear ratio in a car. Maybe you can in a truck, but to hand pick every single option that is available on a car is very, very unusual today, because you got to check option package A and it gets you the leather seats and the AM/FM radio with the MP3 and all this stuff at once. But what we're seeing here today is learning about people from many, many years ago who bought these cars new and what it was like to go through that buyer experience. So we've now landed on a 1971 Sebring Satellite, and I'm here with Randall Lowe. Randall, this is another car with a long family story involved with this one. Tell me about how long you've had this thing.
Well, we bought this car I bought this car in 1974. I had been driving a 74 46-pack Roadrunner. A friend of mine had this car, couldn't finish paying for it. I loved the car. He liked my Roadrunner. We swapped cars. But the only thing was, I had just done a bunch of work. My Roadrunner, the 440, this car was a 383 car. So we traded cars and we did an engine swap the same weekend. And so we've had this car since 1974, 44 years.
That's incredible. So you worked a hell of a deal. You know, you get the car, but I get the engine.
Yeah, and it's really a good combination. It really, really is a good combination. It's been a real good car for us. It was our family car. It's been in a ditch. It's been stolen twice. It drove away on its own one day.
I'm also noticing that there is a deer antler under the hood up there on the corner. There's got to be a story there.
In 1984, late for work as usual, beginning of a 50-mile commute to work on a 0-degree Iowa day. A deer jumped out in front, wrecked the car, totally wrecked the front end of the car. And that antler goes everywhere that the car goes.
Yeah, I was going to say, you hold a grudge on that one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that was the end of the car until 2002 when we started the restoration.
Well, and this being the Roadrunner GTX, it's got a lot of luxury stuff, I'm guessing, inside.
Well, it's a very highly optioned car. It's a 2-fender tag car. Again, it was a 383 car. This is a Satellite Sebring Plus, which was the top Sebring. When I started the restoration, I had no idea that this car had any particular value other than I really liked the car. So I rebadged it as a GTX because it's something I always wanted. Last year, I started a restoration on a 67 GTX, and I had Galen Govier run the numbers on the 67. I had him rerun the numbers on the 71, and I found that this was a one-of-one car. So another restoration is going to be done with this, and it'll be restored back to a Satellite Sebring Plus.
Now, that 383 that you traded out of this thing, is that still around or is that long gone?
That's long gone. But this motor, interestingly enough, has a build date that's within 60 days of the build date of the body of the car. And so it would be considered a replacement engine built within 60 days of the build date of the car. So that'll probably stay there.
Well, you walked the fine line between modifying it but using factory correct stuff as what the factory would have done.
Absolutely, absolutely. we tried to bring this back as close to original as we could. The spark plug wires are correctly date coded. The glass is correctly date coded. It's just as close as we could do, and yet it's a fun driver.
Very cool. Well, listen, we really appreciate you bringing it out. It's a neat car, neat color. Again, something you don't see it every day.
It's a real honor to bring it to the Pebble Beach of muscle cars.
Well, we appreciate that, and I know you got some family here too, and I hope they are enjoying the show as well.
My son Andrew, my wife Sherry. This is a family project. It really is. When we go to shows, we all go to shows, and we all work on the car, and we all detail it, and it's just a real good. These are real good family projects. They really, really are.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you guys enjoy it with the family. Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. And I can't say it any better. If you have an opportunity to work on the car with family, it's a great way to bring them together and share stories and experiences, and you end up something like this. That's the big prize at the end. We're going to move right next door and look at let's hear it for that 71.
Hey, Kevin.
How you doing, Paul?
Good, nice to meet you.
So this is Paul Milano, and Paul has a beautiful car, 1970 Dodge Charger 500. And Paul, I would like you to tell us a little bit about the difference between a Dodge Charger and the Dodge Charger 500.
It's just a trim package. In 70, it was just a trim package for a 500, its moldings and trim. In 69, it meant something much different, basically like a Superbird or a Daytona, which a flat back window and all that. But
yeah, 69, the headlights were pushed out forward for aerodynamics and all that stuff. But by 70, you're saying it's appearance.
It's just a trim package. It's really just chrome moldings, chrome belt moldings, chrome wheel opening moldings. That's all it is. Yeah.
Well, we're going to get a quick look at this thing around. One of the things that I noticed about this car that's pretty cool is the color. What color is this thing?
FK5 burnt orange. It's the original color. Original interior color. It's a very strange orange color, orange on orange with a black vinyl top. I think it's an awesome car.
Well, you're here in the original and long-term owner's display, so how long have you had this car?
I bought this car in 1981 off of my best friend's uncle who was selling it because he was going through a divorce. It was a race car at the Gary, Indiana Route 30 Speedway drag strip.
U.S. Route 30.
Yep, Sunday. So yeah, he used it for that. I went to his garage, I looked at it, it was ugly black and spray can, rattle can under the hood silver. I said, I want that car. $500 later, it's mine. He put the original engine back in it, the original trans back in it, took his race stuff out, and I drove it as a kid.
And I see the Magnum sticker. What engine's in this?
383 Magnum HP with the pistol grip 4-speed and an 8 3/4 323 rear end. It's a highway gear, so not too many burnouts.
Yeah, but it must be great to drive on the highway because these cars are super comfortable.
Oh, it's like driving a Cadillac. It drives like a boat. It's wonderful. I mean, and it gets great gas mileage. It's like 8 miles to the gallon.
Nice, 8 to the gallon. Well, listen, Paul, we really dig this car, and I'm so glad you were able to hold on to it after so many years, and you still get out and enjoy it and bring it to events like the MuscleCar and Corvette Nats.
Yeah, I love coming to MuscleCar and Corvette National. It's an excellent car show. If you're at home watching this, come on out. Yeah. Tomorrow's the last day.
Yeah. If you're in a different country, we got to make plans for next year, but it'd be good to see you.
Yeah, Bob will pay for your airfare.
Hey, that was not me. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, now I'm in trouble. Yeah, I appreciate that. So we're going to take another little walk here through the long-term owners' cars. This one here is a 1973 Buick GS Grand Sport Stage 1 car. This particular car is one that is so overlooked. Many people don't know that the GS Sport Package was continuing on in through 73, and when we look inside, we see a bench seat with a 4-speed, no less. A lot of people thought performance was dead in American cars by 73, but the owner of this Buick GS, Matt Spruill, will tell you that this thing will still hold its own even today. It's a beautiful car, and again, one you don't see every day. The MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals is a great place to see these. In our long-term owners display also, we saw some cars where the owner might have had it for a long time and never really used it, which It's cool if it's got low mileage. You know, that looks good on the odometer. It's good for the value. But it's kind of a letdown. You know, you really want to see people that are using their cars and driving them and having a good time with them. So we found something over here, a 1966 Shelby GT350H car. And those who know these cars know what this is all about. We're going to talk to our friend Steve McDonald. Steve, why don't you come up this way? And we got kind of ignore our PA announcements. It's live, and I'm not in control of all that. Steve, welcome to the After Hours Live program.
Thank you.
You've got a very good-looking Shelby GT350H car. Looks like it might be used every once in a while, but you drive this thing like crazy.
I drive it a lot. It was a daily driver when I got it in '71 for almost 20 years, until it became so bad I couldn't drive it. The floor fell out for the second time, so it sat for about 12 years in my dad's driveway. Then we decided to restore it. A friend and I did it over a 10-year period, so it's an owner-done restoration. It's got an $1,100 paint job on it. It's 14 years old. And even though the sign says it's got 35,000 miles, it's actually got close to 237 because we just got back from a tour of upstate New York with a bunch of other GT350 owners. We drive it as much as we can, have as much fun as I can.
237,000 miles, my friends, proving that there is longevity in some of these cool muscle cars. And of course, being the GT350H, this was originally part of the Hurst rental car program.
Yes, sir. This one was originally rented out of DC National Airport, and the gentleman that I bought it from Hurst. He had a Mustang with a 3-speed manual transmission. His wife wanted an automatic, hence the GT350H. Most of those were automatics, only 85 were 4 speeds. When she got pregnant for the second time, she wanted air conditioning and power steering, and I was lucky enough to buy this for $1,000. I didn't have $1,000 when I bought it, but the dealership I worked at worked a deal with the bank, and for $98 a month for 12 months, I was able to finally get the car.
Incredible. Very, very cool story. So what year was it that you bought this car?
I bought it December of 1971. It had 40,000 miles on it.
Just listen to these numbers. December of 71, 40,000 mile car, bought for $1,000, financed for 90-something and change a month, and driven to multi-hundreds of thousands of miles and enjoyed along the way. Also being the H Hurst rental car lineage. Now, a lot of those cars, it's my understanding that in '66, Hurst rental cars said, yeah, we want to help Shelby get the name out and share these cars as basically race cars, but we need things like radios and power steering and brakes, and Shelby really wasn't all about that. How was this one outfitted originally?
Well, it's funny you mentioned radio. I have some original paperwork, and it shows this and 29 other cars getting a radio installed for $5 each. I think the shipping from from California to Ohio to DC is like $60-some, and it was invoiced to Hurst for $3,800. The guy I bought it from, he thinks he paid about $2,500 or $2,600 for it. So, you look at it and you see, wow, it was a great thing. There's no power steering. The brakes are designed, like say, to keep a maniac happy for 24 hours. So when they're cold, they groan, they squeal, they don't make very good stopping, they have to get warm. The power steering, the steering is quicker than a power steering ratio, but it's manual, so you're like Popeye arming it to get it to turn. But this is pretty much as you would have seen it back in the day with the stripes and the wheels, and it's been a great car for me.
And this is the 305 horsepower or 315?
306.
306, basically a slightly hopped up K-Code 271 horse.
Right. I talked to Chuck Cantwell, who was the project engineer for Shelby, and I said, how did you come up with that? Did you dyno it? He says, no, we just thought the carburetor and the manifold and the headers added 35 horsepower. I said, you didn't ever check it? No, we never checked it. He says. So it's a good story. There are 3 Hurst cars here at the show. We have a white and gold, the black and gold, and a red and gold. And everyone thinks, well, they were all black and gold. They were black and gold, and there was approximately 50 each of the white and gold, green and gold, red and gold, and blue and gold. And there's 85 4-speeds of those.
Very cool stuff. You mentioned Chuck Cantwell. He was here, I believe, last year. Or 2 years ago, yeah, here at the MuscleCar Corvette Nats. We had the opportunity to interview him and learn some really cool stories about what it was like to be in that Shelby program, cranking those cars out like crazy and kind of making it up as they went along.
Right. Like he says, their assembly line was a pit in a warehouse. And even like this car, they were supposed to have either Ray Brown or Impact with the 2 seatbelt manufacturers. This car has one of each. So he says, I guess the guy on this side of the car didn't talk to the guy on that side of the car. We were actually trying to think how many places this car has been. We think it's been in 38 states that I can count. We were just trying to count them before you all came up. And in 2022, I'll have it 50 years. And I want to take a trip across the United States, hitting either all the places I did or try and hit the state capital of all 48 states over about a 2-month period in 2022.
That sounds awesome. That sounds like the ultimate all-American road trip. I hope you do it.
All right.
I really appreciate that you brought this car out and that you still have it and you enjoy it. That's what this is really all about. And, you know, just because it's a Shelby doesn't necessarily mean it was a $1 billion car. I mean, these at some point were still affordable by regular people. So that is super cool. At this point, let's have a little round of applause for our friend Steve McDonald and this beautiful Shelby GT350H car. And Steve, we're going to take another walk in a minute, and but before we do, we're going to cut away and look at another piece of video from a previous MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals from a couple years ago. And when we come back, we're going to be heading into one of the coolest sections of this show, the Barn Find and Hidden Gems, with a little pit stop along the way. So we'll show you all that when we come back on MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals After Hours Live. We'll return to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals with more After Hours Live coverage brought to you by the Mecum Auction Company soon. But first, let's take a look back at one of the highlights of the past 10 years of the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. One of the most popular attractions this year is this unbelievable display of 67 Z28 Camaros. The Chevrolet Camaro Z28 is definitely one of the milestone muscle cars ever made, and there's a great display here at the 2017 MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals, but it's kind of headlined by your car, the Sunoco car. Patrick, tell me about this car.
Well, this is the second Sunoco Camaro built by the Roger Penske Mark Donahue team. They built 6 total, 2 each year in 67, 68, and 69. So this car happened to be the second Z28 to come off of the assembly line in January of 1967 when they started building Z28s. The car to its immediate right is the first car that came off the line.
Incredible.
The first 25 cars were intended for racers. So when they built the Z28, it was so they would have a 302 cubic inch motor to homologate for Trans Am. So this car actually happened to go to Terry Godsaw first, and it was raced in the first 5 races by Craig Fisher, his driver. Then Craig joined the Penske team, and so did his car, and it was used in the second half of the 67 season by Mark Donahue. He won the last 2 races of the year, which was at Las Vegas and Kent, which is near Seattle. And then they resurrected this car. It had already gone back to Terry Godsaw at the end of the season, but they needed a second car for the Sebring race, which was the second season of 68. This car went back, was dressed like a 68 car. It has the 68 grille, 68 taillights. They left the vent windows on it, which is how you can tell a 67 from a 68. And so this car became Mark Donahue's car for Sebring, but it was 250 pounds underweight. So Mark wrote a great book called The Unfair Advantage, and in the book he reveals how they snuck this car into the race. They had their all-new 68, which is here at the show as well. It had been fully acid dipped, the body in white, but they added back the weight to make it weigh 3,000 pounds. This weighed 2,750. And in 68, they started weighing the cars. So in order to get this car into the race, they swapped the numbers between the 2 cars.
Oh, no way.
Yes. So this car never went to technical inspection, and the other car went twice.
But then they raced this one.
This car was a second and a half faster, and in the book, Mark's talking to Roger and saying, that was so easy to put one over on those guys. why don't we do it in qualifying? So they had a hangar that they had rented at Sebring. They papered over the windows, and there was a 1-hour qualifying session. So in the middle of the qualifying session, both cars came in. They had roundels with rivets. They popped the rivets off, switched the numbers, sent the cars back out. So this car qualified for both.
Awesome. See, and that's there's so many things that are cool about the Trans Am era. First of all, these are cars that are recognizable. You know, this is obviously Camaro. It's not like a NASCAR today that's a template, you know. Next, the innovation of the parts choices and the power these things made and the way they made essentially off-the-shelf factory parts perform, you know, using the parts boxes and swapping stuff from different cars. But then there's the whole racing aspect and some of the racing interpretations of the rules, if you will, that they employed to make this stuff happen. Fascinating stuff.
For sure.
So these things lived a rough life. I mean, how is it that the cars are still here?
Well, the history of this car went back to Canada at the end of the '68 Sebring race. Craig Fisher raced it some in Canada. It was then sold to their Canadian sponsor. It's called Yanyang Springs. They raced it for a year. It was sold to another Canadian racer, an independent. He raced it till '72. They put it in a warehouse at San Air Track, which his brother owned, and it sat there till '85. And a vintage racer named Jack Boxstrom found the car in San Air, recognized it as a Penske car, restored it as it looked in '67, and then with one intermediary, I bought the car in 1988. I've now raced it about 240 events.
Awesome.
So I've been racing it for the last 28 years. This is the 5th restoration.
Nice.
2 of which weren't because of wrecks.
Yeah. But maybe a couple were.
A couple were. The majority of the car is as it was. But I've got a lot of original pieces that are on the wall.
Sure, and that's cool. They've earned their place there too, which is kind of fun.
The lightweight left front panel.
Grandpa, can I play with this?
Sure thing.
Got it.
Sold $41,000 Frank's way.
Happy birthday.
Yep. All right, we are back at the 2018 MuscleCar and Corvette Nats in the After Hours live broadcast, getting deep into the night here at the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals in Chicago. You look around, there's really nobody around. We had a really great cheering section earlier, and we interviewed all those people, and now we're getting down to the last holdouts here. And I'm with Brian Dunham. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And you've been here since about 7 this morning?
Yes, sir, we have. Drove down from Wisconsin this morning, bright and early, so we can get in this morning and do a little bit more.
Wanted to make sure that the Mustang crowd was properly represented today.
I'm glad to carry that torch.
Well, and you've got a beautiful green 72 Mach 1?
Yes, sir, it is. It's actually been my very first car. I bought this car. My father helped me buy this car when I was 15 years old. So.
What year was that?
19, do I have to admit? 1983.
1983. So you're kind of an extension of our long-term owners group.
Yes, I have. I was talking to several of the gentlemen from that category and became aware of it. And I was like, we still would have got in it, but that's fine. I'm really enjoying this show. It's been my first opportunity to come to this show. I've heard about it over the years and really wanted to take this opportunity to come to the show and enjoy it with my car, which I've done. I really do.
Now, I know a lot of younger guys who were in their mid-teens who found themselves behind the wheel of a car like this, and the car didn't last, right? So how are we today, a few years later, and this thing looks dynamite, and you still got it?
Yes, I do. It was rough when I first got it. The original delivery was over in Salt Lake City, Utah, and my joke is it spent its first several years parked in the lake. So it made it from Salt Lake City, Utah, over to the Midwest where I bought it when I was 15 years old. And did the driveway restoration with friends and family to get the car cleaned up and presentable in high school. Painted it red in high school because you couldn't have a green car in high school. But we finished it up in high school and drove it and really enjoyed it those years. And then, you know, life starts happening and you put it away. But I always promised myself, my dad always said he wished he would have kept his first car. So I always promised myself if I could, I would hold on to it. And I've been fortunate enough to hold on to it. We started this concourse restoration back in 2009 with plans of making it to the 50th in 2014. Finished it up about 2 days beforehand, going over to Charlotte, and took it over to Charlotte, and I've been enjoying it ever since.
It's always good to have a deadline.
Yes, it definitely is. It pushes you for that.
So tell me about the car. What's in it?
351 Cleveland two-barrel. It's not a race car. It's nothing fancy, but it's been my pride and joy ever since I was a teenager. Been working on it, trying to restore it to as concourse level as I can. I've shown it through several MCA shows nationally, have done very well in judging with it, and I've really enjoyed it. And that's my plan, is to keep it in my family forever. It's part of my family. I've got a son who's driving now. The plans are to pass it on to him and just keep it in the family and enjoy it over all the years. But 351 Cleveland two-barrel, FMX automatic. It's not a race car. It's not, you know, one of these fancy exotic cars, and there are so many of them here. It's really great to see all these one-of-one cars and all of these just truly incredible cars that they have around this show. But it's also really an honor and privilege to be here with my maybe not so necessarily exotic car, but one that I really enjoy and share it with other folks, and that's what I enjoy about the hobby.
Well, yeah, that's part of your family.
Yeah, definitely is. Definitely is.
I don't think I would have been able to leave a two-barrel on it, but that's just me.
Well, I agree. It was pushing on me every now and then doing the restoration, but I wrote it on the wall in the garage when I started the restoration. The goal was concourse, so you got to keep it there. So it's got the single exhaust on it and the two-barrel in it, but it's got a couple of options on it, and mainly the rear defrost, which was a new option in '72. It's a little bit brings it up there a little bit on its Marty report statistics, but it's got the AM8 track in it, and everything's all functioning and working, and I enjoy it. I drive it.
So the big question, what is the color?
The color is medium lime metallic. And I get a lot of comments on the color. There are some of them out there that still pop up here and there, but you know, you really get it out there in these shows and not a lot of people see that color around anymore, and I get a lot of compliments on it. I'm very pleased with it, and the folks that I had help me with the paint work in Georgia did a wonderful job. And you know, you put it under these fluorescent lights in these shows and it really brings out the paint and can bring out the highs and the lows of the paint, and I've been very happy with it all these years. It's an eye catcher for me personally, and then to hear the feedback from people seeing it, I really enjoy it.
Now, you got the Marty report, which is a report prepared by Mr. Kevin Marty, who will break down a lot of the data that Ford had and tell you how many of each were made. Do you know how many of these medium lime metallic Mustangs were done in '72?
In this paint and trim code, 1 of 165.
That's a rare car.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It gets me some pride.
Right on. Well, that's what it's all about. Brian, thank you so much for bringing it out. The car shows wonderfully. Thanks again for hanging with us. It's been a long day, but we appreciate it.
I appreciate you all doing this. I think it brings it out to a lot of people who maybe are in other countries or other parts of the area that don't have a pleasure to see it, and it's really been an enjoyable show. I'd encourage anyone to come.
We got a comment from a guy in Bangladesh who loves your car.
Hey, yeah, I'll take that anytime.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And speaking of comments, we're going to bring our friend Zach Straits back again, and we'll give the people a little bit different of a background to look at this beautiful, amazing Pontiac Bonneville back there. And Zach's been kind of our man on the street looking at some of the social commentary. Right. How are we doing? People still dig the show?
People still out there. We had some pretty spirited conversation on the YouTube channel, so that was pretty interesting.
Uh-oh, what did I get wrong?
No, wasn't. It was guys asking questions of each other. It's like, well, is that an option? No, that's not an option. And you had the whole debate of the car guys and gals back and forth trying to figure it out. And it was quite interesting. And then now the big thing is people saying, it's like, how do I see this in the future, in its entirety? So you might want to.
Sure, great. Well, that's a great question. So what we are going to do is on the Facebook live stream and on the YouTube live, those will both be recorded and saved. So that file will exist. You can go back tomorrow, watch the whole thing, or fast forward to a particular spot. And then for some of these cars, not all of them, when we go through and see which ones we can get to, we're going to make standalone videos of certain cars. And for example, that '69 Hurst Olds prototype car might be an upcoming episode of Muscle Car of the Week, where the content is just that car. And we'll do a handful of those, and we'll meter those out. So make sure you subscribe to the channels, VATV, Muscle Car of the Week, both Facebook, YouTube, so you get those. So yeah, cool, great question.
That's It's awesome. I've had a great time doing this. This is a blast. Thank you.
I can't thank you enough for doing it. And to our guy in Bangladesh who likes his Mustang, thank you too. No, and everybody who's watching this all around the world, because I know we have a lot of friends in Australia and in New Zealand and in Northern Europe and in Mexico and Central America and, of course, Canada. I think half of Canada's here.
Yeah, they are, exactly. And watching too. So.
Yeah. So we really appreciate all that. And Zach, you're a trooper for doing this. Thank you so much.
You got it. Anytime.
All right, friends. So the after hours live train continues, but I think we're coming towards the end of the station. And interestingly, we've been looking at a lot of these cars that are either original, unrestored, and some that have been restored and polished up and made to look, show car quality. But right now we're entering a zone of the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals that you wouldn't think is part of a car show. This is what we call the Barn Finds and Hidden Gems display of the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals. These are cars that have been found in a certain type of condition and brought here to be displayed in that condition. And a lot of them are covered in dirt and filth, and you would think, you can't bring a car like this to a car show. It looks terrible. Look at this thing. It's got stuff all over it. Well, that's a 68 Shelby GT500 KR Mustang. That is an awesome, awesome Mustang. And it's really fun to see how this car got discovered and brought out with the dirt still intact. I mean, I've been in this display several times over the past 10 years, and many times there's dead animals in there. There's skeletons and stuff. But the fun thing is many of these cars come back again later, a year, 2 years later, and they're restored to look like new. So I think the coolest thing would be to have something like this 64 Plymouth on display in the barn find in its kind of beat up condition, but then to have it come back again as one of the showstoppers out on the main floor. And right now we're going to talk to our friend Ryan Brutt, and Ryan's kind of the guy behind the barn find hidden gem section here. Ryan, great to see you.
Good to see you, Kevin. How are you this evening?
I am doing great, still standing. Good to see you're still awake.
Oh yeah, 4 days straight. Can't go to sleep yet.
So tell me, what was the impetus behind the barn finds kind of legitimizing dirty old cars?
Well, for this show in general, there was, I think the second year, there was one car. It was a 63 split window Corvette, I believe it was. And it was barn fresh. Snow tires on the back, the whole bit. I think it was a 427 tri-power car. And it was insane. It was in the back, but people were just crowding all over it. And Bob and me had done Power Tour a few times, so he knew what I did. And he just offered me, he's like, hey, if we give you a little section, do you think you could wrangle a few cars together and, see if this thing takes off? I'm like, absolutely, let me see what I can do. So in this section where we are right now, I had the one side. And we had, I think it was 11 cars, 9 cars, and it was phenomenal. I mean, the other cars that were on the side, no one even saw them. It was phenomenal. We had Hemi darts, we had the only known V-Code 72 Roadrunner that was known, and it went crazy from there.
Well, I remember that because you couldn't see the cars. There was 10 people deep.
Absolutely. And it was like that, not just for 10 minutes, not for an hour. It was that way the entire day. It was ridiculous. And Bob said next year, hey, those cars that were on the other side, they're not going to be there next year. You're going to take care of everything. So they gave me this, they allowed me the opportunity to use this entire corner as a display of cool barn finds and hidden gems.
Well, and you do it every year, and you keep finding these cars that are like Hemi cars and big block race car Camaros, stuff that got forgotten and forlorn, and you bring them out here, and I think these cars are fun. I mean, everybody loves seeing fresh restorations and beautiful original concourse stuff, but when you see something that's all beat up and rusty, it's kind of liberating. And tell me about kind of the hot one that you've got here this year.
Well, one of the hot ones is a 1970 Dodge Challenger, and by the looks of it, it looks barn fresh because as of last week, it was in a barn where it sat for 28 years. I personally was able to document this car in its resting place about 7 years ago with the owner. It was underneath a mezzanine in a dirt floor or gravel barn with about 12 other Challenger RTs and some other stuff. And there was this real legitimate 1970 Challenger Hemi car underneath the mezzanine, buried in the back, and I'm like, what? Why is this Hemi Challenger buried back here? The tires are flat, the whole bit. And that was it. I mean, so unfortunately, the owner passed away about a year ago, and the family and I had got in touch with each other through another Mopar event and told them about MCACN and what was going on. And they were like, yeah, it sounds like something we'd really like to do to promote our father's legacy and the cars that he had. And so literally as of, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday of last week, that one had been out. The blue 65 that we'll show in a second was out before, but the Hemi Challenger hadn't moved in 28 years from underneath that barn. And the pictures of it being dragged out is just incredible.
That is amazing. So do we know anything about how it ended up getting forlorned?
Well, they were big into collecting muscle cars back in like the 80s and 90s. So him and his sons were just searching for old Mopars, especially Challengers. They really like Challengers, Challenger convertibles. And this one came about. It didn't have its original engine. I don't know about the transmission, but so it wasn't perfect when they got it. So they got it at a good deal, and they just put it away for a rainy day, and that's where it's at ever since.
Too awesome. So do we know what's the future of this car?
I know the family is deciding on the future. As of right now, they need to clean up the father's property. And like I said, he, I believe, had about 20 Challengers in the barn and other barns and on the property.
You might have more material for next year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could literally fill up this entire section, which is roughly 26 cars, with all the stuff that he had alone. So I was very pleased that they were able to. Usually we have, if we even have collections of people, they always pull one car. So we were very fortunate to be able to get two very rare examples of Mopar muscle from their collection to bring it here.
And is that one also the blue one?
That's correct. The blue one is a real, true aluminum front end Plymouth Satellite with the aluminum front end, but it had been modified sometime in its life where they actually hacked up the original aluminum fenders and made it a tilt front end. And they had obviously the custom scoop, and it had been drag raced. I believe it was a red car, they were saying. But same as the Challenger, it was underneath a different mezzanine. And thankfully, unfortunately, what had happened recently was, I believe it was rain or rodents had dug out one of the supports underneath the mezzanine, and the mezzanine collapsed. But thankfully, the father had stacked tires around this car. So when the mezzanine collapsed, it collapsed onto the tires and not onto the car and protected it. So they knew it was time to move it. So they moved that one out earlier this year. But when I told them about the barn find section and all that, I was hoping for, they had a lot of easier cars they could have gotten to. They had a Mr. Norm's six-pack Challenger that was a lot easier. But I'm like, I'd love to have the Hemi car, and I'd love to have the A990 car. And they're like, sure, let's do it. So they went and moved everything and brought them here.
That is too awesome. It is too cool. So I think part of the allure of this whole section is that this is nothing but potential, and it's even cool if they left it, and didn't get to it for a while. As long as they still got it, it still exists. It's not gone.
Oh, absolutely. It's great that these cars, I mean, even in rotted condition, they still exist. Think of how many cars don't exist anymore. Even within the last year, you hear of junkyards crushing out every day for steel. So it's very fortunate that these cars are tucked away in barns all across the country and are constantly being brought out into the light. And every one, because you can see exactly what it is its own unique story. Unlike, I mean, we have rows of beautifully restored cars, which are awesome, but you look at a row of green Roadrunners, or you see a row of beautiful Challengers or GTOs, and it's great. But every single one in here is unique, and it's really cool to see.
It is cool. Ryan, thank you so much for curating the Barn Finds Hidden Gem section. I love it back here. We could spend all day. And if you still are inclined, this show is open tomorrow, and people could come back and see this stuff. Thanks again, buddy.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
You got it. You got it. Well, we've come to a special time. We've reached the end of the line of our tour here at MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals After Hours Live. We've tried to show you a cross-section of cars from new and shiny to here in the barn find section. The commonality, I think, that really brings everybody together is that we all have the love of the automobile, and it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what part of the world, what your economic or political standpoint is. we can all agree that these cars are cool. So my name's Kevin Ostie. On behalf of our crew, Mr. Ben Koopman, Mr. Mike Clark, Kelly Ostie for helping us, Zach Straits for giving us our social updates, Bob Ashton and the entire team with the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals, and all the fun people that brought out their cars and spent time with us on After Hours Live, plus Mecum Auction Company, OPGI, and our whole list of streaming partners, which you'll see in the close. I thank you. Thank you for watching all over the world. We appreciate the feedback. We will have more from the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals next year, but keep an eye on their website. If you haven't been here, you need to come here, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching After Hours Live. I'm Kevin Ostie. Good night. Thanks for watching V8T's coverage of the 2018 MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals After Hours Live, presented by Mecum Auctions. Be sure to like and subscribe our channel for more MuscleCar builds, event coverage, and MuscleCar of the Week episodes. Thanks to the MuscleCar and Corvette Nationals for letting us share the show, and to Mecum Auctions, OPGI, Edge TV, the MuscleCar Place, Mopars and Muscle Cars at the Strip, HTP Welders, Rocket Racing Wheels, MuscleCar of the Week, CarBuffNetwork.com, and all the viewers and participants for sharing this stream. And we'll see you next time on V8TV.